Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another Confab episode. This one's pretty weird, I'm not going to lie. If you want just Bitcoin content, you're probably going to want to just skip this one. In this episode, I have Kerim back on the show. He's been on about a year ago with two conspiracy theorists, one Bong. I'll put a link in the show notes, or Jordan will. As I say, very weird conversation, very weird guy, but a good friend. And I think you're going to enjoy this. The conversation goes all over the place. Lost worlds, use of drugs, bit of history, angels, demons, gods. The audio quality really is not the best. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to clean it up. I recorded this in my kitchen. I very, very rarely do in-person interviews, and I've realised I just need to get a second mic. I tried having two backup mics. They didn't really do the job properly, and we just shared one in the middle of a table, and yeah, it's not the best. I hope it's listenable, but it's not the best. I'm going to buy a second mic for the next in-person one that I have booked, which is actually about a month from now. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and before we jump in, I'm going to just read the boosts from the last Confab episode. The last Confab was with Zach Herbert. If you haven't already listened to it, go and check it out. It's, I think, 3 episodes ago from now. Top booster, John, with 100,000 sats. Couple of things within the first few minutes. GetRawMilk.com. Shadrach has done more than anyone to orange pill the Amish. Would be great to have him on to discuss his farmers market efforts. Buying a herd share and paying a monthly maintenance fee to the farmer is another way round raw milk regulations. We definitely need to do a long raw milk segment on PMM. Too right, mate, we'll do that. And thank you for the very generous boost. Late Stage Hoddle with 33,133 sats. Hashtag who is Hashlatet? Chet with 21,000 sats. Let's fucking go, Max. Full-time Bitcoin podconf. You risk-taking cunt. I love it. The real risk would be for you not to go full-time, homie. The family will eat, and you're gonna feel so much better. Fuck that Fiat Faggins mindset. Great discussion and show. Zach is based. Fundamentals with 21,000 sats. Damn, this one was really good. One hardware company pays for marketing their narrative to a majority of Bitcoin users. Hardware companies need to transcend trust and influence. Ungovernable Misfits is the resistance. Banana Man with 21,000 sats. Terrific episode. So pumped that Max is able to dedicate more of his time to Ungovernable Misfits. Congrats on going independent. Thank you, mate. Thank you to everyone who's been boosting and showing support. It really does mean a lot. Hashlatet with 20,000 sats. Any man with a freezer full of steak is hot. Pleb to Polymath with 10,000 sats. Max, this podcast was full of great info. I don't know if it's my imagination or if it's getting better now that you aren't stuck in fiat mines. Congrats. Wait till you listen to this one. Rod Palmer, 10,000 sats. Zach is a cool dude. I'd smoke a cig with him. 8 Mithrandir, 7,777 sats. Great conversation. Solex, 5,000 sats. Rocket emoji. Huxley, 5,000 sats. Congratulations, Max, on ditching Dutty Fiat. Thank you, mate. User 85445985, 5,000 sats. Great episode. Bubba, great show. Always glad to hear Zach. Being that I'm an early Founders Edition kind of guy. Ooh, swanky, me too. Instead of fuck around and find out with your wallet, they have stayed steady and true. This is greatly appreciated in this day and age, and Zach inspired me. I too may become a health influencer, but but a different kind. I will be a well enough nut influencer, because eat cow, drink raw, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and wash it down with bourbon. You're still going to die, somewhere between 70 and 82. Join the movement, catching fire at the Church of Blissful Sedation. Cowboy, cactus, cigarette, bourbon, skull and crossbones, and a fuck you sign. Thank you, Bubba. Smoke. Have some freedom tokens. More coming, just testing it out. Smoke again, with 4,040 sats. Chad Farrow. Based off the show title, I thought this episode was going to be about packing your freezer full of meat, but that's not the case. Chad Farrow. All apps matter. Max even sold the car. I did, mate. Cycling around. Got tired legs. It's about 20 miles of cycling a day I'm doing now. Still fat though. Bong. 2,345 sats. Another great Confab episode. Pies. Yo. Bar Miner. I like these rips. We don't have to listen to John. Foundation Passport is great. Said I'd never buy another hardware wallet, and they changed my mind. Plus, British Robot works there. Chad Farrow again. Max only reads the larger boosts, which is perfectly fine, and that's a great problem to have. But I hope Jordan prints out these smaller boostograms so Max can read these in bed at night. Actually, you just reminded me. We have so many boosts on this episode, and thank you to everyone for sending them in. But yes, I'm only meant to read the top 10, but I've done a few more. So I might even speed these up or something like that so that we can get into the show. But yeah, thanks so much to everyone. I really do appreciate it. I do read these in bed at night. I read them when I'm taking a shit. I read them in the bath. I think about them all the time, and I love you all. As we've just gone through so many boosts, and the last confab was actually with Zach, and so many people have said some lovely things about Foundation, I'm not going to do a massive ad read. All I'm going to say is check them out at foundation.xyz. Fully open source, best team in Bitcoin, by far the best looking device, the easiest to use. You really can't go wrong with these things. Check them out, and if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me and I'll go through it with you. And if it's really technical, I'll pass you on to Q. Right, apologies for this. It's really fucking strange, but I enjoyed the conversation and I hope you do too. Oh, final thing. The first 2 or 3 minutes is slightly worse audio than the rest. I can't be bothered to explain why, but just work your way through the first few minutes. It gets better. All right, enjoy.
1, 2, 3. But yeah, I always say to my wife, like, at least the deep state is listening to me. She fucking doesn't. So yeah, like, I don't know, I am a bit paranoid about stuff, but I think it's like, how I was with Bitcoin. I think it just has to be good enough, and that's the standard. Like I say, there's always someone more important than you that's going to get more resources dedicated to them.
Oh yeah. I'm under no illusion that like I'm particularly interesting. I look at it as like future. So I'm fucking right. Right, this is why Kerim was absolutely wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yourself off.
Yeah, I thought the dogs would be okay if they had access.
They did, honestly, like, he has this thing that he does as well. He'll be calm most of the day. And then there's like maybe 15 minutes in a day where both the babies are quiet. One's maybe asleep, one's calm. And my missus will go, do you want to just watch like 15 minutes of our show? We're watching this show at the moment she's into. I'm like, yeah, all right, we'll give it a go. The second that we sit down, just a second of calm, he gets his ball and he goes,
because he knows, he's like, no, you're not doing anything. I'm right here. I should start by saying thank you for, like, because I basically was like, no, dude, you need to record this. So, like, being a bit of a bully, but, like, thank you for entertaining me and sort of humouring me. You don't have to put it on. I just want it recorded because it's such a fucking wild story. I'm pretty sure you'll put it on anyway, just because of how fucking crazy it is. But thank you to you for sharing your platform that you've built off your own back. It's fucking amazing work. And I also want to say to any poor sod who listened to the last podcast that I was on and went all the way through to the end, I felt your pain because I did it at the same time last time. I'm about to eat shit for you, because the worst bit, if you listen to Two Conspiracy Theorists, One Bong, the worst bit was that at the end,
Do you know what, mate?
it's been flashing on mute all the time.
Oh, what counts? Do you know, as you started talking, I went, I'm just going to check. I'm just going to look here. And there was no waveform. Well, these can stay where they are.
Yeah,
they can have the full thing, because they were recording. Now we can go. We still have that.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Well, do you want to introduce it then? Seeing as it is your show, it's your platform that you're kindly sharing with me.
Yeah, so you reached out to me. When was it? It must have been like a month. We haven't caught up in...
What, the last time was that?
Was that the last time we saw each other?
That last episode that we recorded, that Two Conspiracy Theorists, One Bong, which afterwards I remember being like, kind of like the next morning, like, oh, I think I rambled really badly about climate change.
We got too high, didn't we?
Yeah. The comments bore that out. But it was, when I listened to it back, I was like, oh, this is not as painful as I thought, listening to the climate change stuff. But it was the bit at the end where you asked the question about DMT and the entities, and I went off on this long ramble, like a proper autistic scientist, trying to explain why I'm right, you're wrong, it can't be possible, and I'm about to eat shit and go back on everything I said and completely contradict myself and admit that I was super duper wrong. So
how did it... I haven't listened back to it other than when I edited it.
It's quite painful. The last half an hour is quite painful.
I imagine that me being a non-science person...
And a non-psychonaut as well.
And a non-psychonaut. But I think I came at it with the view, just because you can't measure something doesn't mean that it's not there, because the way that you measure might not capture everything, and you might not know what you're trying to measure and how to measure it. And you being the physics guy is like, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so I was probably saying something along the lines of, is there possibly other entities that we can't see, but they're there, but potentially with other substances you might be able to view something that's something along... It would be some wishy-washy bullshit from me.
And I think I had a good argument. I presented it very badly. Like, now I'd say, like, look, the basic idea is you've got a TV or a radio and you can tune it to all the stations, but somehow you smash it up, you pour some chemicals on it, and all of a sudden you're allowed to tune into other things that you can't normally do.
Yeah.
Well, why can't we recreate that chemical system artificially? Like, that should be possible if that's real. That was the crux of my argument. I mean, I still can't explain it, but I'm now on board. I'm like, because it's fucking happened.
So go on. So you contacted me about this and you said, all right, I've had an experience.
I've had multiple experiences.
And so I said to my missus, I was like, I'm actually really interested in this, because a lot of people would contact me and say something like that, and I would not completely dismiss it, but I go, they're a bit of a fucking retard. Right?
Well,
whereas you're a retard in your own way, but I know that you don't bullshit. I've known you long enough that I'm like, okay, first of all, you know more than you let on about most things. You're not like someone who tries to seem smart or cool or anything. You're just your own person and you don't try and bullshit. I always respected that. And the other thing is, when you go into something, you're not going to embellish it. You'll report on what you've seen or heard or whatever. Like, you're not going to make it into something different. So when you said, oh, I'm going to give you this info and it's something that I'm already interested in anyway, I was like, fuck yeah. Let's have this conversation. So since we last saw each other, which was what, a year and a half ago?
I guess so, yeah. It was, it must have been. It was in my current house. And when I move out, I'll have been there for 2 years. So it can't have been longer than a year and a half.
You haven't been in there long.
No. Okay, yeah, because I moved in April. So it's like the funny thing about it is, on one hand, everything is completely obvious and undeniable, and on the other hand, it can all be completely written off, because there is evidence. There have been witnesses, there have been multiple people that have been involved in different instances and seen things and felt things and strange things that are beyond explanation. But at the same time, if you took a bunch of psychologists and brought them in, they'd be like, well, you just all took drugs and hallucinated things.
Yeah. Because that was the other thing I was going to say. You know a lot of shit about a lot of stuff. But you also fucking love drugs.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay. But I know a lot of people who fucking love drugs, but they don't function in society in the way that you function in society. So you fucking love drugs, but you hold down a good job, you have a marriage, you've got animals that you look after, you have hobbies, you do stuff, you're active. You're not just a fucking waste man idiot. You're someone who is very capable in life, but just fucking loves drugs. Again, that makes it more interesting, because if you have someone who's just a complete nothing person and they're just like doing a load of drugs, you're like, yeah, okay, well, you're just doing a load of drugs and you're just in your own little world, but you're not. You spend like 95% of your life in the real world in like complete normal everyday shit. And then sometimes...
Well, like I said to my now wife when we first met, it's like, for me, it's responsible drug use.
Yeah.
Now, I have to be honest, like this last year and a half, it has got a little bit, there have been moments when it's kind of been out of hand. Like, we had some, you know, like, it's a specific combination of drugs that have caused these trips. And they are kind of stronger, but we're still on the party drug thing. It's not like DMT or ayahuasca, which is DMT anyway, or like, what's that one? Salvia, things like that are really known for being really strong. It was actually mostly ketamine is the one that's the psychedelic. But there's another, like a little bit that you have to kind of, basically I went to the skate park with my friend and his girlfriend. And I was bemoaning. I was like, yeah, you know, just over the years, I've done so much MD. It doesn't really hit with the same effect anymore.
Oh, really? And
she said, oh, you know what I like to do? Because she's Australian. I like to just have a few bumps of ketamine throughout the night. Yeah. Oh, yeah, fucking. And, so I was like, okay, you know, so I spoke to my doctor, obviously, and got a prescription for ketamine, as you do, and started mixing, you know, have some MD, which was obviously, again, on prescription for my PTSD, and some ketamine, again, from prescription. And, yeah, it was just a fucking magical combination that sort of, it just really made you feel great and have a good time. You know, we had quite a few parties with our friends and stuff. But there would be these moments where my missus is a bit of a savage, and then she would give me too big a bit of Ket, and that would send me into the K-hole, and that's where I have these fucking weird experiences.
Just go one step back. K-hole, isn't that where you just like sort of can't move, or like you feel like you're sort of sinking or something? I've never actually done... Actually never really done that many drugs. Not really... I think I'm too like fucking paranoid and sketched to do most stuff, but is that kind of what it is? Yeah, so it's
dissociative. So it disconnects between your mind and body, and it, you know, so a little bit it kind of makes you feel a little bit drunk, a little bit woozy, you know, you're a bit wobbly on your feet. Everything feels kind of fluffy, but then there's a certain point where you have so much that you kind of dissociate, and you are kind of...
Your mind and body are separate.
Yeah, you're not unconscious because your mind's still very, very active. I remember the first time I did it when I was 18 or 19 in halls of residence. We were all doing it in a friend's room, and me and my friend Gawain, we were just like having a real, like, let's just go. So we went into the corridor, and the corridor sort of grew and stretched in front of us, but we both saw it. Yeah, like, I looked at him and we were like, shit, we ran down the corridor without saying anything. And we ran into my room and we sat there, and then we just fell onto the bed. And at that point, I then dissociated and closed my eyes and just fell. And I don't know what I was physically doing, but I had this mental trip. So in my mind, I was on my own, and I could just see this wall of like green data, kind of like the Matrix, that just showed, this is what you know. And then it filled my sort of mental vision, my mind's eye. Mm-hmm. And then it started to zoom out. And I could see all of everything that I knew. And then the space around it grew.
Right.
And like, this is what you could fill up. And it shrank and shrank and shrank away until it just became like a little square on the horizon. And it just got further and further away, like a dot. To me, it was like, there's so much out there that you could fill your brain with. You have the potential to fill all this space. This is what you know. Boom. And then the next thing, I saw myself as a whirlwind of dust, like Tasmanian devil, like a coloured dust, like little pixels of green. But then everyone else was these other little whirlwinds. And as we sort of interacted, we'd exchange little particles. And I'd get, you know, so if I bumped into a yellow one, we might just bump in and crash off as a, sort of acquaintance, or you might stick together for a while and travel together and then move off. But every time you interacted, you exchanged some coloured particles, and you picked up some from them, they picked up some from you. And that was how I envisioned like relationships with, with people and stuff, you saw some people bouncing off, some people sticking and splitting, some people just staying together all the time. And it was very, very vivid in my mind at the time. Like, that was my ketamine trip. And then I just remember at the end of it, just like, you open your eyes and you're like, fuck, I'm back in my body. What was that? So that was my first ever one, like 20 odd years ago. And that's kind of what happens every time. Like now, that first one, I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move. I couldn't come back to reality. Now I can. It's not as strong and as vivid. But yeah, it basically, you go into your head and you it's a mental realm. I don't really have hallucinations. I do see things, but I'm very capable of looking around the room and seeing things. There's weird moments where nothing visually changes. Nothing, it's like a hallucinogenic. It doesn't change vision. However, say I'm looking at a picture, what it means to me is constantly in flux. So at one moment I'm seeing it, I'm thinking about the materials that it's made of. So it's almost like the wood represents trees and the glass represents sand, and I almost like the way it feels is different. And then it might switch again to like the kind of marketing aspects of it or something. Like it almost like flicks through the things that it represents, but it's still the same image, but it feels different.
The lens that you view it through is changing.
Exactly that, yes, yeah. So that kind of thing is what I get. But there are really weird things as well, where there's just images floating across, like superimposed over what I'm seeing. And they are fucking weird. They are just archive images, just random images. Sometimes it's just stone with carving on it of languages I don't recognize. Sometimes it's bits of paper with writing and equations and things on it. It's never been anything useful. It's just random shit. It looks like photos from an archive or a library in front of my face, just so like I can just see it. And then there was a really fucking weird one the other day with my missus, when I looked at her and I could see like a reflection in her face. And I said, look, can I tell you what you're seeing right now? And just let me see if I'm describing it accurately. Yeah. And then I just started to describe it, and she was like, that's exactly what I can see.
So you could see what she was seeing in the reflection of her face.
We've seen other moments as well where two people in the room, everyone's done a big bump of K, and then two people just kind of nod at each other for a few seconds, for like 10 seconds. And then they go, did we just speak? And we all go, no. And they go, but we did. We just had that conversation. And then they know exactly what they were saying. Yeah. But they didn't say anything.
Telepathy.
There's been moments where we're together and we go on a trip together and we come back and I'm like, did you see all this? And she's like, yeah. So we had the same trip.
Have you ever done it scientifically where you do it, you have that trip that you all share, and then you say like, can we go and write things down separately and see if it's the same?
Not to that extent, but there's been a whole bunch of times where just randomly we start talking about what happened, and like everyone felt the same thing, or it's not always the same. There's a synergy, like two people might have had the same trip and another two people might have had another same trip, but there's definite elements of shared experience that just don't make any sense to me in any way, shape or form. I don't understand it. I can't explain it scientifically. Those things are nothing in compared to what happens to me specifically on my own.
Okay.
So those things are the things that really convinced me, because basically I'm like Inspector Gadget, stumbling and bumbling through and always getting everything right.
Right.
Just accidentally kind of doing things in a certain way, and then I'll fall into a K-hole. And then I remember it really specifically. It's like an information download. So I had one that I can really visualize really vividly was in my head. There was just this conversation about the difference between imagination and reality, and how they are one and the same and opposites and the same thing at the same time. So if nothing exists, it's imaginary. That's not real, but it is, because you had a real imagination You had a thought, that thought's now in your brain. You can take that thought into the real world and then turn it into something. So imagination creates reality, but reality then creates imagination. Your imagination is kind of based on the reality, and they're two sides of the same thing. If there was no imagination, there would be no reality. But if there's no reality, there'd be no imagination. I had another one about the idea that everything has two sides, kind of a similar thought, but more broadly. Like everyone has two opposing sides to them. Everyone's kind of good and bad and right and wrong. And, like everything has two sides. And another one kind of almost about like principle of gender. And this is where it gets really weird, is because I have these thoughts downloaded into me, each as an individual thing. And then one day I come across the Hermetic principles. I don't know if you've heard of these.
I know the word, but I don't know what it is.
So Billy Carson's a really good person to look into for this. But the idea is there was this guy called Thoth, who was an Egyptian god, king, bird-face god. He was also renowned as Hermes in Greek, I think. So he's got the name Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice great, who was a keeper of ancient knowledge. And he wrote these books, or the Emerald Tablets is the famous thing that he wrote, with the 7 Hermetic principles. When I read them, I was like, well, these are the things that were downloaded into my brain. That's exactly what was downloaded into my brain. Principle number 1 is the principle of mentalism, that all is mind. And in my imagination reality thing, it was like, well, I create the world in my own mind. It's just, the world is a simulation that I run, that only I know about. But there is a simulation of the world that we're all part of.
Yeah, there's overlap.
Yeah. And it's written in the Hermetic principles as God is a thought in your mind, just as you are a thought in the mind of God. Now, if you look at the structure of the human brain, the neurons, it is exactly the same structure as the structure of galaxies in the universe. When you zoom out far enough, what you see is these threads with these like central neuron structures with all these like things connecting them. Mm-hmm. They look exactly the same. And that's another principle, as above, so below. You've probably heard that one.
But isn't that linked to all the weird satanic stuff?
Yeah, it's more famously associated with Aleister Crowley, who was they are magicians who are trying to harness the powers of the universe for their own gain. Same with Wiccans and things like that. So these rules and things, though, they really work. They really, when you apply them, so the principle of mentalism, the principle of duality, the principle of rhythm, vibration, the 7 Hermetic principles, they make so much goddamn sense. And these are the things that were being forcibly downloaded into my head.
So there's this Emerald Tablet thing,
mm-hmm.
which I've heard about a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen it, read it, whatever. What you're saying is that the Emerald Tablet was supposedly written by... You didn't say Hermes, did you?
Hermes Trismegistus or Thoth. Okay. He's got a whole bunch of names.
So a god that's named different things by different people, but the same thing. And that supposedly this Emerald Tablet, which is what? A tablet literally written on an emerald?
It's made of some apparently material. Like, I don't know, because it's hard to find images of the real one. I think it's got some weird name like Smorgasine or something. I can't remember what it is.
Right.
But apparently one of the tablets is in Cambridge University. But basically, this information is, if you go and do some shamanic stuff, you go in there, you're going to come up with these ideas on your own. These ideas are kind of universal. They're repeated around the world in multiple different cultures. They're repeated in symbols. The yin-yang is a perfect example of the principle of duality and the principle of gender sort of rolled up into one symbol. And it all relates to this sacred geometry and the flower of life. There's really, like, what's basically happened is, once I've been forcibly made to look at these principles, these key ideas, now I have an ability to look at anything and kind of go, I can see how that connects, and I can see where we're going with this, and I see how it makes sense. Because this is ancient knowledge that was known to people all around. Like, the whole ancient civilization thing ties in massively, because you'll see these symbols repeated across the entire world. Mm-hmm. Like the same symbol repeated multiple times.
And the symbols that you're seeing are associated with one of these 7 principles.
Mm-hmm.
the 7 principles, can you just break them down for me? Because I don't know. So you said duality.
The first one is mind. That's probably the most important one, that your mind controls everything. And there's probably the idea that your mind is way more powerful than you imagine. Like if you dream something and you believe it, it will happen. It sounds a bit grandiose, but a lot of this stuff can be explained in very basic psychology as well. Mm-hmm. Like if you genuinely believe in something that you can do it and you make effort to do it, you do it.
Well,
as long as it's realistic.
Yeah, within the bounds of your like physical capabilities. As a general rule, if you really believe something and you put all your effort and time and energy into it, you will generally achieve what you want to achieve.
But if you consider that the pyramids were built tens of thousands, at least 10,000 years ago, sort of seven, so, they say something like 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, but the evidence sort of disputes that. But regardless, we don't know how they made them, but we know it can be done. Yeah. So if you believe that you have the mental power to build the pyramids with your mind, maybe you can do it. I don't know. There is moments where, as a scientist, I found that whole Randall Carlson waves, vibration stuff a little bit like, come on, there's just not the power there.
This is when they're talking about that potentially within the pyramids there was that was an energy producing.
100% it was a power plant. I like the Christopher Dunn theory is rock solid. As someone with a knowledge of physics, listening to Christopher Dunn, he recently was on Rogan talking about it, like I was completely sold.
One of my sponsors is really into this sort of shit, and he came on, was talking to me about it, just literally about this, not about anything Bitcoin. And that's what he strongly believed, is that it was something to do with that chamber was actually where the energy was created, and that's why it was so important, and that's something to do with the stones that were on the side of it were to, I don't know, it was above what I understood. But so you're saying you would think the same?
Well, I've been in not the Great Pyramid, but one of the 3 big ones, and you bribe the locals and they just let you in.
Right.
It feels industrial. Okay. Because I went to Giza to the pyramids, and then we went back down to Luxor to the Valley of the Kings. We've been in the burial chambers. The burial chambers felt like burial chambers. They kind of, you walk in, they're beautifully decorated, there's all these treasures, there's the tomb, It looks and feels like a burial chamber. You go into the pyramid, the first thing that happens when you go in is there's like a
shaft.
Yeah, like at this really bad angle. And what they've done is they put wooden boards with slats across and ropes on the side, because you can't walk down it, you'll fall. So you're kind of doing this weird diagonal walk down it, right. Kind of almost sliding on your butt down the slats, going down this diagonal shaft to the bottom. Then you go across on a flat shaft, and then you go up another shaft, again at an angle slightly different to that one. And then you turn a corner, and then you go into this weird chamber with it doesn't, first of all, why the hell would you cut weird shafts? If all you want to do is get into the burial chamber, you cut a single straight shaft. All that effort is just completely wasted. There's no reason, no one can explain the reason for those angles. The architecture doesn't feel it's not painted, it's not decorated, it's not beautiful. It's industrial, it's brutalist, it's simple, but it's built to very exacting standards. That's Christopher Dunn talks about the lengths of these shafts and how they are exactly the right lengths to act as waveguides for resonance. So one of the things I taught in physics is specific wavelengths need specific length tubes to resonate in. So, if you get a flute, you put your finger over the hole, you're making the tube a specific length to make a specific note. And that note has a specific vibrational frequency. And that vibrational frequency can resonate other things. Now, if you look at the length of the shafts in the pyramid, the fundamental frequencies that come from those are exactly the right frequencies to resonate hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most common substance on the planet. It's in water, and it makes an excellent fuel. Another thing is that Tesla, and this, Tesla's always
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah. His Wardenclyffe Tower was basically the same technology as the pyramids. Right. Where water runs underneath it. You get hydrostatic electricity. The movement of the water under the tower generates a static electric build-up. That then uses the tower to generate a vibration in the electromagnetic field, which can be transmitted over long distances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this idea of wireless energy transmission. And Wardenclyffe Tower was just like, all its funding was pulled by, I think it was JP Morgan and the Rothschilds.
Great guys.
Yeah, great guys, yeah. The snake, the head of the snake. Yeah, so no one's gone back to Wardenclyffe Tower. It was turned into a junkyard, but a lot of people are saying it's exactly the same technology that the Egyptians were using.
I have a question then.
Yeah.
Talking about Randy Carlson.
Randy.
Randy Carlson. When they were talking about how there was like similar structures in a certain pattern around the world, in a specific line that went around the world.
Yeah.
Could that then be that if you're generating energy that can be transferred wirelessly, that then maybe they're kind of stations, like almost their power stations, and that's how you would power whatever industry you have going? Is that kind of like a rough...
The best way I can describe it is, you ever had one of those Wi-Fi repeaters that you plug into the mains?
Uh-huh.
So what that does is the mains that you've got a mains loop that has a natural frequency. It has a 50 hertz natural frequency that it's alternating at.
Yeah.
You plug your Wi-Fi in, that signal's going all around the room, and what you can do is inject a slightly different signal on top that gets carried by that bigger carrier wave. That's the basic principle. So we're using that technology now. Now, the Earth has a frequency. It does. It has like a very low, I don't know if it's like 5 or 8 hertz, but it's like, single digit frequencies of vibrations. I'm not sure what's causing it, but we have iron cores, we have a solid and a liquid layers of the Earth's core that then move. Molten metals will create an electric current, which creates a magnetic field. So we have a really strong magnetic field that protects us from like the solar wind and the radiation. That's why you get the northern lights, because what you get is you get this like toroidal magnetic field around the Earth. The solar wind comes in and all those charged particles get diverted to the north and south poles, creating the northern and southern lights. They are energetic particles. So we have a really strong magnetic field that has some frequency, some kind of natural rhythm to it. There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of energy that can be tapped and used. You can use the natural energy of the planet, and you could theoretically divert it around, using the natural shape of the Earth's magnetic field.
It makes sense that they would be generating power given what they were capable of doing didn't seem as though it was done just with manpower. It would make sense that like you have a way to produce energy and you're using this energy, I don't know what for, whatever, but it seems as though they were using some form of energy. So that would make sense that they were producing it.
My wife says I'm like Charlie Day in that episode of Always Sunny where he's, Pepe something, and it's all
Pepe
on the...
Sylvia.
Yeah, and he's just like crazily joining things up because there was one night, she and a friend went out and they went to this lovely Western themed thing. And I was at home on my own. I was like, I'll have a little bit of acid. I'll have a little bit of MD. And then when they came home, they were like, we had a great night, and they were telling me all about it. And they're like, what about your night? And I was like, it's probably not. And then they were like, oh, tell me. And then I pulled out this notebook just covered in writing. And I was just like, right, so basically, and this is what my name means, and this is what happened in Turkey, and this is who I am, and this is what my history is, and just jumping around, linking all this stuff. And like, but the wild thing is, like, for me, I have to go and check these things.
Yeah.
So I'm annoyed, like when I'm watching any kind of, like most of what I do watches on YouTube.
Yeah.
I have to pause it and go and double check it and go, is that true? There's so much that's not known about human history. Modern anatomical humans have been around for at least 250,000 years. We have a written history that covers 7. 7 out of 250,000.
Do we only have 7 because we didn't have writing, or is it because there's like the burning of books and there's like a wiping of history?
Both. I mean, the first written is Sumerian, cuneiform. So those Sumerian tablets are the oldest record, and what's in them is insane.
Isn't that all the Anunnaki stuff?
I'm full in on all of it. Well, I mean, I met 2 of them, so we'll get to that. That was wild. But yeah, if you actually look at what's in those tablets, you can say it's nonsense, but there are hundreds, thousands of these tablets, and they all repeat the same stuff about alien visitors coming to Earth. And it's like, why did they write all that? It's incredibly specific. We started watching this channel on YouTube called Spirit Science. Great channel, highly recommend it. And they tell insane stories, like the Anunnaki movie or the Nibiru movie. These are bizarre stories, but somebody took a lot of time and effort to write these things down.
I was going to say effort, because if you're writing on tablets, it's not like fucking doing a voice recording or just banging something out on your MacBook. You're carving.
We're digging up some clay, and then we have to wet the clay and make sure it's the right thing, and then we slap it into some kind of frame, and then we get our reeds and sharpen our reeds, and then we're sitting there like doing these weird little lines. Because a lot of it started as pictograms. So they were actually pictures first, and then over time it evolved into sort of more symbols to make that meant words. It weren't quite phonetic like our alphabet is a phonetic alphabet. Theirs was more pictorial. But the effort to go through that.
You have to care and believe in what you're doing. Right.
And the same thing with those pictures. A lot of the pictures that come from Mesopotamia and I want to go to the museum again on acid.
On acid.
Oh, yeah. And just go and look through that section. Because I did do it a while ago, just on a half tab. And it was fucking wild then. It was insane. I had such a great time. There was one girl just sat there staring at this giant Egyptian statue head for about 40 minutes. She just sat there just staring into the head of the statue, and I was like, I'm fucked. What is she on? Yeah. But the amount of data that's been recovered from ancient Sumer and Acadia and Babylon, mostly out of Iraq and Turkey, is just wild. And like what it explains, like the flood myth. The flood myth is, we all know Noah, but you've got the Enuma Elish, you've got Epic of Gilgamesh, you've got multiple stories that are exactly the same, which is about a flood and then some god, some, visitor, some sky person, whatever, tells an individual you've got to build a boat and protect yourself. And then that legend is in North America, it's in East Asia, it's
with a slight twist in each place, but
different people, slightly different background. But the idea that someone warned human beings about a big flood, it's a prevailing story. And it's really hard to debate it, especially Graham Hancock. We watched the whole Ancient Apocalypse series.
We watched that as well.
Once I started doing my own research, I realised how deep he's going because there's a lot more. Like, for instance, it's a well-known scientific fact that you used to be able to walk from Britain to France. There's a place called Doggerland. You can find a Time Team documentary on it with Tony Robinson. Not Tommy Robinson, he's a cunt. Tony Robinson, going into the channel and digging on the seafloor and finding remains of villages and stuff like that. So there was trade from Britain.
So you could there was a certain section where the sea level was low enough. Yeah. Was it just for a certain amount of the day that it was low enough, or was it just consistently?
Constantly, because of the ice caps.
Right.
Human beings, we split from the primate branch at a time when the Ice Age just began. So, when hominids appeared, a couple of million year period where we diverged from the branch, we started to become hominids. And I'm not talking about Homo erectus. I'm talking about not even Homo neanderthalis. Like I'm going right back to pre-Denisovians, what are they called? Cro-Magnons and things like that. So they're not quite humans. If you brought one of their babies back, it would look different. It would behave differently. Yeah. It's a different species. All of our timeline as hominids is getting colder and colder and colder into the Ice Age until the last 12,000 years, in which we have the end of the Younger Dryas and then we have the warming of the globe. So we have not ever, as hominids, experienced a time period where it's not been glacial. So we've never experienced the full interglacial. We've never lived in the tropical paradise of Earth. Our whole time has been ice sheets. So you've got these huge ice sheets that are coming right from the North Pole, all the way over North America, right over the top of Scotland, right over Norway, Sweden, coming right down. That's where you cause all these dramatic landscapes with the glacial movements and stuff. That means the sea level is extremely low because most of the Earth's water is in ice sheets at North and South Pole. So you could walk across the channel because it was just dry land, Doggerland. Also, there was a landmass between Mauritius and India. They call that Lemuria because the fossils of lemurs are found in Madagascar, and then they're found, like, I think in like the Philippines and places like that. And they're like, well, how did they get there? Because they'd have to walk all the way around the Arabian Peninsula, all the way down there must have been land connecting these lemurs, and that's where it got the name Lemuria. But there's also Indian legend in the Tamil region about an old landmass in the Indian Ocean. And then I picked up a book the other day by a guy called James Churchward in Hastings about the lost continent of Mu. Mu was supposedly a landmass in the Pacific Ocean. He claims that humanity actually started from there, and a lot of symbols that were used there permeated across. So it's entirely, like, it can be found. The idea of the Lemuria, they call it Mauritia now, because of Mauritius being nearby. There is a sunken continent under the Indian Ocean. That's provable scientific fact.
Right.
The sea level was lower, thousands of years ago. That's provable fact. There would have been, Doggerland existed. Now it's underwater. There would have been large areas of land that don't exist today where human beings could quite easily have, the whole Easter Island thing. Those massive statues on a tiny little island. So they sailed those big rocks there. Those heads are just the heads. The bodies are buried underneath.
Yeah.
We think that they just sailed them on boats. What kind of massive boats must they have had? However, the sea level's lower and that whole area is a continent. Makes a hell of a lot more sense.
That's true.
So I'm all in on Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, these continents. It's possible that Mu and Lemuria are one and the same, but they also seem to be in different areas. Lemuria is south of India, whereas Mu is supposed to be in the Pacific. So
from memory, you always believed in the Younger Dryas impact theory.
Well, it's not. You don't have to believe. The impact theory, yes.
Whenever we've talked about that, you haven't really changed your position on that.
Well, since Graham Hancock's come out, I didn't know about
it. You didn't come up with it.
No.
But ever since we've had the discussions, you've believed that. But what's changed is your view on maybe some of the more what you might call woo-woo or mystical stuff has changed because of experiences that you've had. Yep. So you've talked about chucking a little bit of ketamine in with some MD and how you maybe have had experiences where you could have shared visions or telepathy.
Yep. When
you talked to me on the phone, you said about entities, which is what I kept talking to you about because I was interested, even though I've never done the drugs, but I'd like to. You've talked to me about entities. You've said that some of what you've experienced there has strengthened your conviction about. You seem much more convinced now about, and I said at the beginning, the reason it's interesting talking to you is because you're not a bullshitter. Most people are. So when you say to me I really believe this and I've really researched it, I know that you haven't just gone onto a fucking YouTube video for 10 minutes and gone, oh, now I fucking know what I'm talking about.
I've spent hours and hours.
I know you have, because you're
on every different individual part of the subject. Just talking about the lost continent of Mu. I've got one of Churchward's original books. I picked up a lot of the older research material. I'm collecting these books.
Proper autist. I get it. That's what I know when you say I've researched something. I know, collecting old books, sitting for fucking weeks on end, just researching a specific topic.
I get a lot of help as well. I'm using algorithm-mancy.
What's that?
Like shuffle-mancy. The idea that God uses the algorithm. God can use computers.
Right.
When I say God, that's a really triggering phrase, okay?
Yeah.
Let's first of all when we talk about entities, there is a hierarchy, very specifically, right? Right at the top, you've got Big G, G-O-D, the creator, the architect of the universe. Not a bloke, okay? Definitely, in case any Whitney Webb types get offended by it, But she just seems like the type that'd be offended. But if, I'm a bloke, so I'm going to refer to God as he, because, I connect more with that masculine energy side of it. But I think the big architect, creator of the universe, is very aloof. I may have had experiences with him, but they're done in a way that I don't remember. So I have flashing, fleeting moments, and appears in other people's bodies as well. So that it's just like my friends talking to me, and I'm talking to them, but I know it's someone else behind the face. So I remember having one moment where I felt like I graduated, like I completed the tutorial. Like life is a video game. I'm very in strong belief that life is a game, and I'll help you understand that a bit later. And I thought I was doing really well, and I was getting to a high level. And then I got this experience where it was like, congratulations, you've just completed the tutorial. You know now how to move around. And I was so disappointed. But I remember that experience, it was very quick. I couldn't keep track of it. It was just flashing images, firing into my brain, and they speed up. That's one of the things that convinces me that it's a download, because I'm so in awe of the experiences because they're so detailed, so rich, and so quick that I'm being surprised. Now, if you consider from a computational aspect that if it's all imagined, my brain is creating a reality for me faster than I can compute it. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, the level of detail here is insane. And it speeds up. It gets faster and faster. It does this kind of exponential thing where it's kind of, and by the end of it, I can't keep up. But it's just this rammed in information.
I get what you mean. So you're saying that if your brain is the processor that's creating it, why is it not capable of also reading it as fast as it's writing it? Why would the upload speed be faster than the download speed, which is very rare?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm creating it, uploading it, and then I'm perceiving it, and I'm like, fuck.
And you're shocked by it, even though you're... Yeah, that makes sense. If you look at it in a computer way, you're always going to upload slower than you download.
Yeah, well, you've got to create it and then see it, and then you've got, then you're kind of, even if it's going direct in, the ability to create is so much greater than the ability to perceive. It's it just boggles my mind, and I can't reconcile it. It feels like it's external.
So when you're having these major downloads, you're alone?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are people in the room, but no one else is involved. There's no shared trippage or anything like that. Someone might be in the same room.
And when you're having the biggest downloads, or the things where you have seen or interacted with some type of entity or something, what compounds are you having then? Is it just the same? Is it you're doing a bit of ketamine and a little bit of MDMA, or is it something different that's got you into that state?
Yeah, there's it probably shouldn't give, because it's kind of promoting the use of it. And I will say that I think anyone who wants to try and do any shamanism, it should be your own unique experience. It has to work for you. There's much more to it than just banging a load of drugs, prescription drugs that you've been given by a doctor. Okay, it's not that simple. There is other elements to it. Again, like I said about being Inspector Gadget, or almost like Donald Trump, just randomly lurching through, somehow getting everything right, avoiding every bullet, like Inspector Gadget. There are other elements. One of the things I didn't realize is its activation of the chakras. So that, again, sounds super hippie. I hated all that kind of stuff before.
I know you did.
That stuff pissed me right off. But they're there. And, there is a big part of it. And, some of these drugs naturally will activate the chakras. So the stimulant aspect, because the adrenal glands are one of the 7 chakras.
Right.
So the fact that you're having one stimulant is firing up your adrenal glands. The dopamine kind of gets you a bit randy, That's the 2nd chakra. So you kind of have to do a bit more than just take drugs. You have to do things which activate your chakras. I, again, was doing them completely by accident just because they're fun things to do when you're on drugs. Yeah. And I think, you've got to explore your own personal way of joining up that energy and getting your third eye opened.
Okay.
It sounds so woo. But it is.
It's funny hearing you say stuff like that.
I know. It feels so wrong coming out of my mouth.
But again, that's why it's good from you, because you're not like a hippy-dippy, wishy-washy type. You would be cringing at hearing third eye and chakras and stuff, and you'd probably be quite annoyed by it. It's a powerful enough experience for you to reconsider and re-research and then come at it from a more sciencey approach than just like... Because some people just want to believe shit.
Mm.
They've got a group of friends who would like love to hear that, and then they don't really feel comfortable enough in their own skin, so they just think, oh, well, if I say this or if I imagine this, and they can sort of create this world around them that isn't actually truthful, you know, and you see that especially with like chakra-y yogi typey people, and they're fucking annoying. So that's why it's interesting seeing it from you. And so, okay, you might not want to go through the specific combination of things that you might do or drugs that you might take, but you get yourself into this state. Yeah.
It basically involves not MDMA. MDMA works. It's basically like the stimulant and the ketamine, but the one that works mostly for me was a stimulant that was legal and was banned. Yeah. So when you mix that and ketamine up in a 50-50 ratio by weight,
right,
we call that the magic mix.
Okay.
That's fucking wild. It is wild stuff. It's like, that's why I said it's been kind of problematic, because, you know, I order some from my doctor.
Yeah.
And look, it's supposed to last a month, and we just hammer through it in like 3 days, like on a 3-day bender, which is something I've never done in my life.
Because it's quite Moorish.
It's so Moorish. But then that's where it would really start kicking in, because what would happen is the stimulant was so strong, like it really powerful release of serotonin and dopamine, like mad. And then you've got the ketamine on it as well. What happens is the level of ket in your body builds to such a height, you know, so that you can almost go into a K-hole, but the stimulant's so strong that you're completely wide awake.
So you're dissociative, but you're present.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I start to get the effect where I'd go and sit in the toilet for a wee, and I'm like, what is this? Like, you know, stuff streaming across my vision. Like I can see the wall and the mirror, but like it's like an overlay filter of like just weird text. And if I close my eyes, I can see it. It's because I'm seeing it through something else. And this is where I'm like, you know, you start researching the pineal gland and you start realizing that it has optical receptors. It is very similar in structure to an eye. You know, an eye is actually not a separate organ. It's part of the brain stem that's pushed out through the thing. And the pineal gland is very similar in structure. It's the third eye. And like, it feels to me like just my third eye is just wide open at that moment, and it's just looking at whatever's there. So once you've got to that high level, then all I need is one good rail of K, and then I'm off to the races. And like, you know, you go and have this experience, and like, you know, they can be a little bit freaky. There have been moments when my missus was like, you were laughing like the Joker.
Right.
Because the architect has a very twisted sense of humour. He's very funny. He's very clever in what he does and how he does things. And he would teach you lessons in a way that is very vivid. So like, I started to realise that magic is real. Like, a lot of this comes from looking at international politics as well. And because I'm big into following all that stuff. Like, I love Dave Smith on Part of the Problem. I listen to people like Daryl Cooper, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, which I get a lot of shit for because she's wild. But you know, when you look at what's going on, it's really hard not to think that there is some real big problem going on and there's something really, really wrong in our world.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
To the point where it's actually quite evil. I came to that conclusion that you didn't even have to believe in God and the devil to believe in good and evil. That evil exists in the heart of men and Hillary Clinton.
Well, yeah, on the evil thing, you know, you're saying like you have the yin and the yang in that tablet. That's something, I don't do a lot of drugs, but it's thoughts that I've had when I used to smoke a lot more weed, and I always like to smoke alone, think about things. And I remember having the thought, I'm properly evil and I'm properly good. And within me, there are both. And like, you see them flicker.
The potential.
Since having my kids, I've seen flickers of extreme evil flick through my brain when any type of threat, really small, like my missus' mum, her dog, sometimes gets a bit funny with the kids. And he's a harmless, useless little dog. Like, even if he went for, like, nothing really. But the flashes of evil that go through my head of what I would do to that dog makes me know that it's there. Or if someone gets a bit too close or a little bit. So I know that, like, there is pure, the worst fucking evil within me.
The potential.
The potential for it. Yeah. It's there, like 1 second away. And extreme good is there.
Yep.
It makes sense that, like, there's that balance. Most people are balanced and they're pretty decent. So then it is that fight and that balance constantly. And it does feel like people maybe that are pulling the strings are definitely more on the darker side than...
Well, this is where, like, it's actually quite upsetting to realise a lot of what you're saying, the truth of the time, because I was sat in my car crying, driving home, because I watched, like, a really long documentary about the Second World War, and I realised that our country were the bad guys, that we were not. That is, now, a lot of people are having to make this claim. Just because I'm saying Churchill was the villain doesn't mean I love Hitler. Okay, I'm not
obvious.
Like I'm Kanye West.
Yeah,
here.
I know you well enough to know.
Yeah. Like, if I say the war in Iraq was bad, it doesn't mean I love Saddam Hussein and I want to gas the Kurds.
Great guy.
So, I mean, that was a great moustache. But, like, you can be objective. And this, like, I wouldn't normally have talked about this on your show because it's quite a controversial topic. But the Overton window has now shifted. Like, recently, Tucker Carlson had Darryl Cooper on, and he said that thing that Churchill was the great villain. He made the case for it. There was a lot of flack. Dave Smith. Do you know Dave?
I know who Dave Smith is.
Fucking amazing.
Well,
I love him.
But I haven't listened to the podcast that you're talking about, and I haven't delved into the subject at all. But I'll tell you this. I don't believe anything that I'm told in the history books unless there's a way to verify it. Because, and I've always said, I got suspended from my school for arguing with a history teacher about this. Because I said, I don't believe it, because why would I believe what's written? It's just a man writing it.
Well,
and I actually got suspended from school for
being right.
Well, because I was so angry about it. I was only like 9 or 10, I think I was.
Wow.
And we were like having this argument. I was like, it's pointless to learn because of why would I learn something that is not provable? It's stupid. And that still carries now, but even more now, because it's like, obviously, whoever fucking wins writes the history books.
History is written by the victors. And what's that Norm MacDonald says? Look, it says here the good guys won every time. What are the chances of that? Look, I came up with this the other day, and it's very simple. If you're the good guys, your soldiers die defending your country on your land. British soldiers overwhelmingly die as invaders abroad. Where do our soldiers die? They die in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Northern Ireland, in the former Yugoslavia. We are an invading imperialist army. Same with the US, same with NATO. We go around provoking wars, starting and creating wars on behalf of our satanic pedophile overlords.
I like that meme where it's like shows the universe, and then it's just got
you are here paying
taxes to pedophiles. So much truth in that meme.
And they are satanic. Like, if you really want to go into it, episode 34 of Candace Owens' show, she goes in, and that was one of those ones I was sitting there, we were pausing it. 28 minutes into episode 34 of Candace Owens. I highly recommend you watch the whole episode. Yeah. Episode 34 starts off with the Olympic ceremony, and then she goes into Emmanuel Macron and how his wife is not a woman. Pretty obvious. Every photo, her neck's covered with some kind of scarf or hair or like collar.
Big Mike.
And when you say, well, Big Mike's a little bit, I don't know if that one's...
It's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun one, yeah. But like Macron's wife, 100% is a dude. So she destroys both of those, and then she goes off on this rant about why it's satanic imagery. And like, this was what, as I say, I was pausing it, and I'm like, she's goddamn right. It's all here. It's all like listed on Wikipedia, and there's all historical websites devoted to this satanic cult that basically in 1666 declared, I think it's Sabbatai Levi, as the Dark Messiah, this like satanic Jesus. and how those folks have been corrupting various people. You know, they've got into different religions. They've got into the 3 major Abrahamic religions, and they've convinced these people to do their bidding. And then the next episode, episode 35 of Candace, she goes right through it all, right through the associations with like proper satanic ritual murders and things like that. And that was on Tucker. When Tucker was interviewing Daryl Cooper, he talks about, I can't remember which landing it is, like, but they did it on the 6th hour of the 6th day of the 6th month. And then he looks into the camera and he goes, that was the sacrifice. They sent troops out to fight each other and die on the 6th of the 6th of the 6th as a satanic blood sacrifice ritual. And again, you don't have to believe in God and the devil to believe in their followers.
True.
So these people did really fucked up, really evil things. Like, no one said, why are you doing this on the 666? Like, that's really weird that you're sending people to die on 666. You'd think that would be just kind of a topic of conversation. You know, you see the whole Olympic ceremony with the pale horse, the transgender Last Supper, all these things that were just really bizarre. And, you know, it's pretty obvious to me that there are elites who do worship Lucifer, Satan, Saturn, whatever you want to call it.
And why do you think they rise up the ranks and have the most control? It seems, as someone who doesn't really research it a lot, but it seems to me like over and over again, the people who are making decisions and sort of trying to force the world and like people's thinking in a certain direction certainly seems to be stronger from the darker side.
Well, a lot to do with the natural cycles. Like, one of the good things I found is that there is a cycle of human consciousness, and this is where it starts to sound all woo again as well. It is linked to the movement of the Earth and the precession of the equinoxes. Hancock talks about the precession of the equinoxes. This long period of time, I think it's like 36,000 or 24,000 years, I can't remember the exact number. But it's this movement where if you look at where the sun is at midday on the equinox and then map it over thousands of years, it moves over time, so it kind of wobbles back and forth. That creates a cycle, a loop. And what that loop matches is to the yugas in Hinduism. You have a golden age. Longest, slowest bit of the cycle is the golden age. Right? That now is way gone in the past. From the golden age, you then go into a silver age where things are starting to get worse. And then you go into a bronze age where things are getting worse. And then you go into the worst age, which is the iron age, Kali Yuga. You know, you probably heard that good times make weak men.
Yeah.
Weak men make
create hard times.
Hard times
Yeah.
make strong men. It's kind of like that. But the Yugas, the Kali Yuga is the bad one. Good news is that ended in 1700. The worst point, you know, it was darkest before dawn. The actual coming of the Antichrist, of Sabbatai Zevi, in 1666 was just before 1700, which is the end of the Iron Age of human consciousness. We are now up into the Bronze Age. We're heading towards the Silver Age and eventually going to get to the Golden Age.
Well, that's good to hear.
It is optimistic.
Because often I always think...
Don't want to be black-pilled.
Yeah, well, I always think, like, fuck, things are dark. And I guess I'm looking at it as, like, more of a... like, on a shorter time frame. As we've talked about before, why is it so much fucking harder for us than our parents? That's just in an economic sense. But then, obviously, that changes all the parts of your life. Like, it's fucking hard having kids. Now. Oh my God, it's fucking really hard. And so then you look at things like that and you go, that's getting worse. It seems as though it's getting more and more tough in terms of like surveillance and all the stuff that we talk about on the show all the time. So then that makes you think like, well, how is it going to be for my children? It gives some hope if it's like, oh, well, maybe it's actually like, maybe we're just going through like a little blip within that movement.
Well, if you think it is objectively better and subjectively worse. Like, if you can consider crime rates and things like that now compared to the 50s, 60s and 70s, it was much worse back then because there was no DNA evidence. You know, fingerprinting was quite new. People could get away with murder. Like, a lot of murders were more prolific, you know, in the olden days, just because there wasn't the technology to capture. if you look at statistics, it is objectively a better time because of that. We have better food, better sort of standard of. Well, I mean, we have more access to calories. For the first time ever, our health is being the worst problem in our health is over consumption of calories. When throughout most of recorded history, it's been under consumption of calories.
We have more access to calories, and you're a bit more likely to get caught if you fancy a murder.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Yeah, but also like your general comfort, like if I want to, I built a shed in my garden not long ago. It's still not finished, but it's there. I made it out of reclaimed materials. I did most of it with labour. But at the same time, I had power tools. It was so easy. Like, compared to if I was trying to do that by hand, like I had to cut wood. I met a carpenter from India and he was like, oh, carpentry is so easy in England. You just go and buy the wood. In India, we have to cut down the tree.
Yeah.
So, like, for him, carpentry is totally different skill. You're working with wet wood. You have to take that into consideration. It's going to shrink and change. You've got to build things in much, much, much more complex ways. So in that respect, our life is objectively easier. A lot of people do just sit on the sofa a lot of the time and just watch TV.
There's tools that make things faster and make things easier. But then fighting against that, the counterbalance to that is that you have less time because you have to work more to pay for the things that you actually need, like shelter and food that aren't absolute shit is more expensive, and fuel and all the like energy, basic shit that you need. But the counterbalance is that technology makes things faster, which then eats away at that time that you've added, but still net, there's all that stuff that seems like we're going backwards, but then there's all this promise of technology which helps to fight like all the bad shit where it's like surveillance and a load of satanic paedophiles trying to spy on you and fuck your life up. It's like there is this counterweight where people are creating ways around that. It's not easy, but it's like, well, we have these tools that we can use, so there's like that's the positive side.
And like Elon Musk has done a lot of good work with Twitter, but what we really need is some kind of decentralized network where people, like a decentralized social network where people can vote on polls. Like that would be the ultimate thing. Something that is verifiable, not based on trust.
Yeah, maybe.
It's completely over. If there is a platform where petitions can be launched, can be voted on at a local level and then put up at a national level, then we can say, no, we've got all 60 million people in the UK have voted on this and it's 80% in favour of Keir Starmer being beheaded and raped with a bayonet. But raped with a bayonet first. Like, obviously I don't advocate violence. That is satirical. So I'm really sorry, Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah, don't arrest me. No, I get you. But and that's the other thing is that most people don't actually vote. So it's just like a very small percentage of people that vote, and then it's like, and then do you even trust? No, I mean, like, I don't trust any of it. But
I love my wife, but I had to drag her to the voting booth and go, no, just vote in that one there.
Which one was that? The Monster Raving Loony Party?
No, just go and vote for reform. Well, you are quite right in your opinion that if you go and vote, you're consenting.
Yeah, and that's what I don't want to do is like, I don't want to encourage this nonsense.
No.
And so that's kind of my view. And I also don't believe that it does anything because I believe that there's like levels above it that make the decisions.
Well, I mean, it's true. The first past the post system in the UK meant that Labour needed 12,000 votes per MP, whereas Reform needed 80,000 votes per MP or something crazy. I think it was 800,000 votes per MP. It was a ridiculous number. It's just completely not fair. And then I heard that they were like, oh, well, you had the referendum. And I was like, what fucking referendum? I had to go and look it up. There was a referendum, not on proportional representation, but on an alternative voting system. And at a time when I was very sort of active, like I was paying attention to politics, I was a fucking member of the Liberal Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Fuck that now. They have a good policy on weed. That's all I really cared about. But I didn't know. I had no idea that there was a referendum on voting. Like, it wasn't like the Brexit one. It was not publicised. I just was not aware. It's wild, the shit they get away with. Just like, we'll do it, but we won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's you're just consenting to an oppressive system.
I just can't I can't pay attention to it anymore because I'm just like, A, got too much other shit going on. B, I don't trust any of it anyway. C, I don't want to be involved and like, I don't want to encourage something that I don't deem to be real or acceptable or like, I haven't agreed to any of it. No point in my life have I ever gone, yeah, what I'd like is a system where there's like 2 or 3 options-ish, but they're all controlled by the same people. And I want you to make all my decisions and I want you to steal most of my money. And if I decide at any point that I don't want you to steal all my money, what I'd like you to do is completely destroy my life.
Yeah.
Never fucking agreed to it. What I actually would agree is just fuck off.
Yeah.
Just fuck off. Out of my, like, I don't want anything, nothing from you. Ever. Don't take anything. I don't want fuck all from you. What about, police? You call them, like, if you're in trouble. I would never call the police if I were in trouble.
No.
I've done it a couple of times when I was a kid and, like, bad shit was going on.
It ended up causing yourself.
It caused me more trouble fucking dealing with the police than it would have been. And I was like, I'll never do that again.
No, you would. It's much more efficient to deal with problems on your own.
Definitely.
I definitely have, and it's a lot easier. If you chase someone with an axe, they don't come back. It's very simple.
Round to your house, you had the crackheads next door.
Oh God, and the gypsy.
The pikey.
Imagine that look on your face when you've just beat someone. Like, imagine this scenario, a theoretical scenario. Someone's banging on your neighbour's door. You hate your neighbours because they're junky crackheads. And so you're like, fucking, I'm going to have this guy. And you try and throw him down the stairs, but you don't go down the stairs. And then you run inside, come out with a prison baton and turn to get lost or you're going to hit him. And he doesn't go. And you're like, I've just counted down. What do I do? And you go, I've got to hit him. So you hit him with the baton a few times and then he fucks off. And then they go, thank you. He was a traveller. And you're like, oh, fuck. But that's the one time, like, in that theoretical scenario, I'd be glad that the police did turn up because then when the police were there, the car full of travellers turned up. Yes. But they never came back. And the next morning, the king of the gypsies came round and blessed me and said I was fine. So
how did that go down? What was
it was so weird. Like, he just turned up the next morning and he was like, look at this. You've got the door barricaded with a barbell and don't worry. I'll make sure he gets a hiding and his dad. We don't need to hit his dad. He's already had a hiding. It's fine, just as long as it ends. But that's how they roll.
Okay.
Because they were angry at this gypsy lad because they're not supposed to get involved in hard drugs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're allowed to, get a bag or smoke a joint.
They can smoke a joint or have drinks, but they don't.
And cocaine. They love cocaine.
They love cocaine, yeah.
But if you're doing crack or heroin, I think you're an outcast in their society.
Okay.
So that's why they were angry with him, and I never had hide nor hair of it ever again.
You were lucky, because I remember turning up and you going, oh yeah, don't worry about the mess. I beat this pikey with a baton. I threw him down the stairs. It's all right though, because the crackheads have gone. And I was like, I'll just come around for a cup of tea, mate. Are they coming back? You're like, no, it'll be all right.
Yeah, like literally the local head of the gypsy, the traveller community came over and was just like, like I said, just told me I was fine and that.
We got the blessing.
Yeah. I can't remember how we got onto that.
I don't remember either. Let's get back to I'm interested to hear about these entities.
Right. I have had a direct experience. Get to that in a minute. But basically, most of what happens is, you're in the K-hole and you have this experience and it's more like information being downloaded. I don't see any people or anything like that. It's just thoughts in my brain, completely sort of write-offable by a psychologist. It's just like, yeah, well, you just, the drugs make you very introspective. And it's like, yeah, but at such a speed, I can't follow my own train of thought. And in the end, it's like it feels like I thought about something for 10 hours in 5 minutes. It was very, very intense. And then you come out with this very deep-rooted thing because you've explored it. Banging on the mic, sorry. You've explored it right to the end of the thing where you can't think of it anymore. There were times when I'm sort of sitting and talking to my wife, and then all of a sudden something popped into my head. Like it just went, and just went elves. And it was just like, the elves. The elves. Because one of the things that inspired my journey, like, you have to do a lot of things, I think, to get to this stage. I think you have to, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like you have to be physically primed. You have to have worked out and got your body in a decent state, which, you know, I did 10 years of bodybuilding and took all the naughty supplements. So I have like quite a good physical base. My body very sort of works great.
You're a large unit. Much like an American fridge.
What was I watching? I was watching Gongo, and like Affleck, when he walks in, you think, God, he's a big lad. And my missus was like, no, that's how when you walk into a room, you look big.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah, you're a large unit.
So physically, I'm there. Like mentally, I've also kind of, you know, done a lot of research into science, psychology, people. I have a lot of broad ranging tastes. But one of the things I also have done is I've got into religion. I decided to try belief. Mm-hmm. And what I've realised is I believe in belief.
Okay.
So if you believe in something, that is powerful and that gives you something.
Yeah, makes sense.
However, I find Judeo-Christianity and Islam completely lame and gay.
Okay.
I don't enjoy those. They don't resonate with me. The stories make no sense. Particularly, like, even when I was a kid, when they explained, like, the Good Samaritan. If you were to do that story today, it would be like, oh, the non-criminal black guy. Mm. It's like, what? Did you realise how racist that sounds? Like, oh, he was a Samaritan, but he was nice.
Yeah.
Like, what? You know, it's this like the clean Asian. It's like the worst stereotype of someone. And I was like, that story sucks. That makes the person who wrote it sound like a complete bigot. By the way, I'm not. I'm just using those as examples. You know, the good Asian driver, you know, like those are the kind of examples of how I saw that parable as like a 10-year-old. So I never resonated in any way, shape or form with the Christian stuff. But I do love the idea of Odin and Thor. There's my Mjolnir hammer. So I just I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to praise Thor and Odin and see what happens. I'm just going to go into it, learn about the mythology. That started me on the trail to the ancient religious texts in Sumer. Because what you find out, you start listening to Norse mythology. So there's a really great podcast on Spotify called Norse Mythology, The Unofficial Guide. I fucking love it.
Okay.
That guy is amazing. He deals only with the sources, doesn't add any interpretation. He goes, this is only what we know. We don't know what this means. We don't know what that means. Could mean this, could mean that. That's just my guess. It gives you the story. And I love the stories because the gods are flawed. They're not perfect.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, they're stories that teach you about yourself. You can kind of think about, what would I do in that situation? They're funny. They're violent. They're really good stories. I really enjoyed them. But also what you start to learn is the circling of legends and myths. So there's two clans in Old Norse. There's the Asir and the Vanir. Basically, they're the same people. They're the same legends that are slightly filtered through different geographical locations. So you almost got like the Norwegians get their story from, most of it comes from the European steppe, the Eurasian steppe. And then the Swedes have got the same version of it, but it's been changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. So they come together and you've almost got the same goddess twice.
Right.
So you've got, in Norse, you've got Freya and Frigg, Frigg is Odin's wife and Freya is like a younger maiden, but they kind of have the same root, but they diverged over time. So you kind of start to see this history. And you go through Old Norse, you go back to Old Germanic, and then you go to this language called Proto-Indo-European. Now, this is a fascinating language. We kind of lost a lot of it, but the history of it is, if you look at linguistics, there's common roots. Like we say father, the Germans say Vater, okay? And that comes, and you know, in Italian they say pater, patros. They all come from the same root word, but there are little changes to one letter that like happen over here or happen over there. And by tracking those changes, you can follow the language right back to, very specifically, Turkey 12,500 years ago at the end of the Younger Dryas. So what you've got is all of these linguistic traditions take you right back to the mountains of Ararat in Turkey, where Noah's Ark landed after the flood. Everything before the flood is gone. That's our oldest record.
So that's like where any humans, in theory, then restart from.
Absolutely. And they have their one big story that they start is the Earth was destroyed.
In this flood.
But we were given warning by the sky people. That's kind of one of the things that, my belief in the gods, primarily trying to be like Thor. Mm-hmm. Because Thor's like the protector of humanity. He's the hero. He's the guy who kind of looks after everyone. And he's a badass as well. He is Viking Jesus. That's all he is. He's Odin's son, protector of mankind. And at Ragnarok, he dies fighting Jormungandr, the great serpent. He dies for us. And the world is reborn out of that. So it's very similar, the sort of stories. It's a bit mixed up because like Odin's the one who gets crucified on the tree. He hangs himself on Yggdrasil, kind of like Jesus' crucifixion. So there are parallels in different elements. Some characters might do this, but you get a lot of the same.
It's the same story retold.
Yeah, it's
in a different way.
Different people. Yeah, it's just
which is the same as like Hancock is talking about. A lot of things, there's these repetitions throughout, which would make sense. Like if humanity starts in a certain point or restarts in a certain point, and then people go their different ways, and these stories slightly change along the way. Absolutely. But it's the same sort of idea, and then the language makes it slightly different as well. Not to the same extent with you, but because one of the hosts of one of the shows that I do, so I do it with this guy called John, who's like, he's very religious, but he would never push it. He just, in his own life, prays, he does church, does all that stuff, very religious. And so sometimes I just like ask him about stuff. Through having conversations with him, I'm like, sometimes I just have like a little pray. Not like to a specific god, not like Odin or Thor or God or whatever, but sometimes I'll just be like, just take a minute or two and just like, what do I want out of life? Who are the people that I care about? What do I need to do for those people? What do I need to do for myself to make me as useful as I can be to those people? What am I thankful for? And just have a little minute, but it's not to a specific... No. It's just like, if you are a thing that's out there, cheers for the good stuff, and like, help me make myself more prepared for the bad stuff. That's all it is.
And that's, I take everything with a pinch of salt. I like the Norse thing because it's a pre-established framework that I can look at, and then in looking at that framework has also taught me about a lot of other stuff, the history and the sort of linguistics and that kind of stuff. But it's just a convenient lens to look through, and I like it. It's cool. It's got cool style. I've got some tattoos.
So you started tattooing yourself?
Yeah. So I started by doing
proper prison tat.
Yeah, I've done the Helm of Or on my leg, which does annoyingly look like a snowflake. But I've
Fitting.
That's me. Like
through and through.
What's it? Valknut, which is like the triket. Three sort of triangles looped together. That kind of looks okay. I've got to do one more tattoo on myself before I'll dare do it on other people. Yeah. I think 3, the second one's pretty good. I think it's all right. And if I get a third one that's real good, I'll be like, right, I'm ready to do it on someone else. It's way harder to do it on yourself. But yeah, so I've tattooed the symbols. I love the symbols. I love the story line of it. I think there's real power in symbols. But like the history of the symbols is fascinating as well. Like one of the things that's really fascinating is the history of the swastika. And I'm talking pre-1930s. That symbol is very, very old. I've been in Indonesia at these ancient temples, and there's swastikas everywhere. But it appears all over the world, that symbol.
Wasn't it like the symbol of peace, or the symbol... It's some originally...
Well, there are a lot of symbols, like, one of the simplest symbols are like the circle. The circle is a powerful symbol because it symbolizes unity. It symbolizes the number one, right? It's the unchanging. Like number one stays as number one. There's no other options. It's just one. Yeah. It kind of represents God, the creator, the original spirit. You need a second thing. You were talking earlier about the potential to do evil in yourself. Yeah. Without the second option to be good or evil, you can't be either. You are just one unchanging thing, and there's no comparison. So you are just what you are.
Well, yeah, and also if you don't have the choice between the two, what's the quote? It's like,
This is Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, it's like I can't remember.
Jordan Peterstein.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson. But in that sense, it's like if you don't have the capability of it, then
he said,
you're not actually.
Yeah, if you're not capable of violence, then you're not peaceful. You're harmless.
Yes, that's it.
It's having the capacity for violence and choosing not to. That is what makes you peaceful, not harmless.
If you consistently choose good over evil.
Well, this is what I strongly believe in. When I decided to try, I'm going to have a go at religion, and I'm going to try believe. I'm going to try having faith. That was the moment where the shit started getting real, getting crazy. I've tried to be good. It's almost impossible to be good all the time. If you try and be 100% good, you're fighting battles that are unwinnable. You can't see a hot woman in public and then you have to almost chastise yourself. No, that's your sister. You know what I mean? Her boyfriend, he's your brother. You wouldn't covet your brother's woman.
Is that bad? That's a human. You cannot physically as a bloke, you can't not notice it. I'm going to choose not to look. You can do that, but I don't think it's bad to your natural instinct is
sometimes your natural instinct is to steal, though.
That's different, I reckon.
I'm not doing that anymore. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not sort of, because I actually don't think I'm meant to be good. I'm not on the good guys team, and I'm definitely not on the bad guys team. I obviously don't like the bad guys, and I want to be the good guys. But actually, I think that's a trap, because the good guys think they're the good guys and think that the bad guys are the bad guys. And the bad guys think exactly the same. And they're both right.
Do they, though? People who are doing sacrificial killings and all this stuff, they're do you know what? We're fucking good lads. You know those people who want families and to have good quality produce and just look after each other and be kind to each other and create? They're cunts. We're the quality ones. Surely they don't think that.
You have to see it from their perspective. They believe that the end justifies the means.
Okay.
So I said earlier, I had this thought where elves popped into my head. I then put an elf door in the woods and sort of left a little can of Bob Ross energy drink for the elves, or a vape. I hope they had a good party. And then someone smashed it up, so I made metal doors and windows for the elves. I felt like the elves sort of told me that they were aware of my presence, but I didn't have any interaction with them. I have had a fucking insane interaction that made me almost go into a complete psychotic breakdown. Okay, this was fucking terrifying for me. The good thing is I have had a witness for it who saw and heard everything and confirms that this is what happened, which is really fucking weird, because there were two options. One is I'm completely insane, or the other is I spoke to two entities in the flesh, and I don't know which one's more scary. So this is my weirdest experience. So I'm at a festival in Derby, a heavy metal festival. It's a fucking party, all right? Everyone's having a great time. I have had...
that Bloodfest one?
Yeah, Bloodload. We're having a day, but I'm kind of I've been on drugs, but I'm not fucked.
Yeah.
Okay, because you kind of pacing yourself. You're trying to spread them out. So actually, throughout the whole weekend, there was no moment where I was completely out of it or completely fucked. Nothing like what I'm at home. No K-holes, nothing. It's just a gentle, comfortable buzz. I go back to the tent with one of my friends, and she's like, do you know what? She went a bit hard on the Friday. She's like, I'm going to go to bed. And I'm like, I'm not that tired, but I'm like, well, it's just me. I'm like, okay, fine. So I go into my tent and I'm like, well, I'm kind of a little high and a little, I'm on my own. I'll have a little gentleman's experience in the tent on my own. So I'm sitting there bashing away, and I suddenly hear these voices coming in the distance. Because it's intense, you can hear them, and there's quite a long path. So they're like, Kerim. So I get dressed, pull up my clothes, come out, and I come out into the area where we've got our gazebo, and I see him coming around the corner, and they go, oh, we've brought Max. Max is a guy we met the year before. He's a Russian guy. Big Russian, big beard. Hi, come on, sit down. So we sit down and we start chatting, and people are buzzing around, and me and Max are starting to chat. Max starts saying some weird fucking things, man. Weird ass things. I don't think he knew what he was saying, but he looked at me at one point and he goes, I was listening to a Russian song. Let me translate the lyrics for you into English. There will be a place for you in hell where you can masturbate all you want, and there'll be a demon or an imp to guard you. And I was just like, the fuck? That's like the way he would, and he did this look.
The way he delivered it was...
He's looking right into my eyes and he's going like this. And it's like, I'm like, is he threatening me? Is he saying I'm going to go to hell for wanking in my tent? Like, what the fuck? And I'm just kind of like really confused at this point because I'm like, that was really weird. Like maybe it is just some random, he is just translating some weird song.
Yeah.
And then he starts going off at me about, we need rules. You don't understand. And this really freaked me out because I've been working on a system of alternative laws. I've come to the idea that there is only actually 4 crimes. You only need 4 crimes. We can do away with the government if we have a good court system, a good police force and local councils. We don't need a national government, okay? We need 4 laws. There is...
Don't kill.
Kill.
Still.
Assault, theft or property damage, or last one is violation of human rights.
What are human rights?
Well, a really good way to go would be the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that's already been signed by most countries.
Are human rights just things where you don't need anybody else to do something for you, but someone can't impede on your freedom, basically?
Well, it's a list of rights that we should all have to create equality I think it's post First World War. I'm not sure when the declaration was written, but there's multiple articles. So, for instance, Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that you should have the freedom to have, share, and hold opinions. You should be able to communicate them to anyone without any interference, regardless of frontier or media.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's the Declaration of Free Speech.
Freedom of speech, yeah.
Yeah. And ironically, I've had my ability to comment on Instagram removed for repeatedly posting the Article 19 of the Human Rights definition. Brilliant. Every post that would be about the troubles in the UK and the fact that it's a attack on free speech, I just have it copy pasted. I just put Article 19 of the Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they went, that's spam. You now cannot comment for like a month. Fucking irony of that. Amazing. But yeah, I don't think that like all I would do with that is run it through ChatGPT and make it plain English. Because I don't like the fact that a lot of things are written in legalese. Yeah. I think they should be written in most plain English. But that's a really good starting point, that Declaration of Human Rights. So you can't withhold access. You can't lock someone in their home. You can't stop them from having free speech. There's a whole bunch. Shit. Yeah, it's a really good thing. Like, I don't need to work on a list of human rights. There's already one in existence, right? Yeah. So that would be it. Now, a lot of people would go, yeah, but like, obviously the first 3 are good. Someone always tries to give you what about rape? Well, that comes under assault. Yeah. Like, it's a sexual assault. It's the same thing. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. But what it then does is it does away with all these bullshit laws. For instance, it shouldn't be illegal to go fast. But you do want to also, if someone's driving like an absolute dickhead really fast, you want to be able to arrest them. Okay. But like technically, under my system, it's not a violation of any of those 4 laws. But it kind of is. Like, if someone's driving fast on the motorway but they're driving fine, you can't really arrest them for that. Because you'd have to go to court and you'd have to make the case that they were somehow violating the rights of the other people, their right to safe transport and travel. Now, if you're driving on the motorway like an absolute dickhead in your Audi, cutting lanes, and you're doing 110 miles an hour and you're like whizzing in and out, you're going to the quick lane, and they've got camera evidence of it, police car can just quickly pull you over and go, we've seen you driving like an absolute knob end. We have enough evidence to say that you are endangering people's rights. Go to court. It would be quite an easy thing to prove. But you couldn't just give someone a speeding ticket for going 36 in a 30 zone. You'd have to make the case. But it puts the burden of proof on the police and the judicial system. And I think it's a great logical system.
It's better than our system now.
Yeah.
That's what I'll give you that.
The only other things, jury of your peers, that's all fine. Individual judgment, do away with precedents as well. You can't refer to a previous case because every case should be based on its own merits. Anyway, getting ahead. So anyway, I've been working on this idea that there's only 4 laws. So Max, who at this point I'm starting to think, is he a demon or is he possessed by a demon? He starts going on about capitalism and communism and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but they're the same thing. Capitalism and communism are just part of the Hegelian dialectic created by Marx, as a weapon to control society and implement a worldwide communist one world government.
What do you mean capitalism isn't?
Capitalism is part of Marxism. Capitalism and communism are two parts of the weapon. You have out of control crony capitalism, where government supports
but
that.
That's not capitalism. That's
crony capitalism.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Well, look, you and I believe in laissez-faire capitalism, free market capitalism, which is fair and equitable.
Anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah. But when people complain about the horrors of capitalism, what they're pointing at is not anarcho-capitalism. They're pointing at crony capitalism.
I think most people who point at capitalism don't even know what capitalism means, and it's just something that they've heard, and what they think is other people are richer than me. I don't like capitalism. That's what I genuinely think people think it is.
But you argue with these people, and it's very easy to destroy it, because what they'll say is like, so what, you think there should be no government regulation? I'm like, yeah, because that would bring the prices of everything down. It's like, no, it wouldn't. They'd create a price fixing ring, and I'm like, are you retarded? Because that's exactly what's happening right now with the energy companies. Before government regulation in 2021, we had about 30 or 40 energy billing companies. Let's be honest, let's be straight about that. They're not energy producing companies. They're the motherfuckers who sell you the energy. But we went from like 30 odd to 6 in a month. I got an email from my energy supplier. It was a company called Green Energy. And they said, we cannot compete under the new government regulation. It's completely designed to create basically a monopoly. And these 6 companies then come together, price fix, jack the prices up, government allows them. That is crony capitalism. It's completely, without government intervention, without government regulation, someone else could go, oh, I'm just going to sell you energy cheaper than these guys.
Well, that's just free market.
Yeah.
It's like these have all jacked their prices up. Okay, now there's a massive margin, which is an incentive for someone else to compete. And they might not want to make 300%, they might want to make 200%. And then that creates an equilibrium. And that's what a free market is. But what I'm saying is that when people talk about capitalism, they don't understand that there is an option. I don't think that people can understand what a world would look like without the amount of interference that there is now. I just don't think it's like a possibility for them to think that far, or that far from where we are now. And so then those kind of conversations are just fucking kind of like just pointless.
Yeah, well, it gets crazy because it's like, obviously if there was completely no regulation, which is what I think should happen, then there is also a risk that someone will do it dangerously, cut the corners and do it as cheap as possible. And,
and make a nuclear power plant in their garage and like...
Yeah. Or just, your power, the energy supply you get is just not as well controlled and regulated or something like that. So they will say you need regulation, but of course... You also need to just let things happen. Like, no one's going to use a company that's dangerous and people are blowing up and dying. Maybe some people will die, if that happens. But it will eventually sort itself out and the market will go, look, this is the minimum cost we need to make it, deliver it safely. And then this is the kind of maximum cost people are going to pay for it. And it will sit between
somewhere
that.
In the middle.
So, yeah, it will naturally sit that way. But what we're experiencing now with crony capitalism, where the market is like, name me 2 things that are not illegal, licensed, or regulated. I'll give you one. Breathing. You can do that for free. Although now they're putting air quality things on ULEZ and stuff like that, so it's kind of being regulated.
Licensed or regulated. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
There's nothing that's not somehow completely banned outright. You're not allowed it. Somehow you have to pay for it. They've taken away your right to do it unless you pay them for a license.
Or they tell you how you can or can't use it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So there's no free market
even
capitalism
basic shit,
anywhere.
Fishing and stuff.
Yeah,
It's like
food.
you need a license for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't watch your telly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a license for that. It's ridiculous.
Well, someone's got to pay for old Huey boy.
So that's why I believe capitalism and communism are part of the Hegelian dialect. So do you know Karl Marx? Have you looked into him?
I mean, the basics.
Right. So Karl Marx was this Russian guy with a big fucking beard, right? This is part of the weird thing when I'm talking to Max.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it's the ghost of Karl Marx is in Max.
Right.
Like Max Marx. It's like kind of weird. He's Russian. He's got a big beard. Like, it was a very weird experience because he was telling me, look, you don't understand. He was putting his point across. And, you know, I would say he's the evil one. But his point is, like, you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelette. It's about law and order. It's about having control. It's about looking after people and making sure they're safe. Yeah, maybe things are a bit tough, but they need this. They can't look after themselves. They need it. And he believed it. Whatever entity, whatever spirit was speaking through him did think he was the good guy.
But hold on. Obviously, Marx is stupid. Doesn't work.
It does work. Look at the world we live in, mate. We live in a communist country. Communism has conquered the world. Why did we go to war in the Second World War? What was the thing that made... Because we declared war on Germany, not the other way around.
I'm not a history buff.
The thing everyone will come back to is, well, we gave Poland a war guarantee and they invaded Poland. Okay? All right, so we fought that war to protect Poland. The fucking Soviet Union took Poland at the end of the war. So why did all our boys die? To protect Poland? But then we gave it over to Joseph Stalin, one of the worst villains of history.
Yeah, but my point is, we don't live in a fully Marxist or communist or capitalist society. We live in a weird because we still have strong property rights or relatively strong property rights. Well, relatively strong. I can still own a property.
What happens when you die?
The state will still a large percentage if you are to have it owned in a specific way, but there are ways around things.
I know. You could put it in a trust. You
can do things with trust. There's clever shit you can do. But my point is, we don't live in a society where there is no ownership and everything is owned by the state. And we don't live quite like that.
Yeah.
We're maybe sliding that way.
Yeah.
But my point is, we don't live in a Marxist or a communist society. We live in a weird sort of mishmash of a few of these ideas.
I'm going to completely disagree with you because you just couldn't name anything that isn't regulated, illegal or licensed.
But you can still have property rights.
Yes, you still have property rights for a limited period of time. As well as that, the way you acquire property, unless you are extremely wealthy, is you have to go through a central bank, pay a ton of interest, you have to have a down payment, Yeah. They're making it extremely difficult to access the property. And at the end of the day, when you have that property and you want to pass it down to your family, they'll take a big chunk of it. They're doing as much as they can get away with, and they're going to... It's a slippery slope. We're boiling a frog. You put them...
Yes.
If they just threw you into hot water, you'd jump out and go, fuck this, we're not doing it. Yeah. But they're slowly boiling the water. They're slowly upping the tax rates and the interest rates and all this kind of stuff. And it's not going to be long before we are completely dependent on the government.
Agree with all of that. But what I don't agree with is that we are in a fully Marxist or this or that.
Socialist? Would you go with socialism?
I would go with we're a mix mash. You can still have strong property rights. You can still live relatively free, but it helps if you already have money to do that. If you're wealthy and connected in the UK, pretty much do what you want.
Or if you're poor. Because if you're at the top or the bottom, socialism supports you.
Middle class is fucked.
The middle class is being absolutely raped. But if you are completely on benefits and don't have a job, you're completely supported by the state. You have full socialist network there.
Yes.
If you are a bank and you gamble all your money and lose it, all of that taxpayer money is... Yeah, so there is socialism for the upper class and the lower class, and it's the middle class that is getting fucked.
They leech from the middle.
Yeah, and the whole point is to destroy that middle class completely, and when that gap closes, you've only got the upper and lower class, and then you've only got socialism. Do you want to pause for a piss? Yeah. We need to do a restart point. What we were saying before is, before we went for a wee, is that you rightly say we're not quite there yet. However, you can see that we are sliding.
You can see a pattern.
Yeah. Now, that is deliberate because that is written down. There is a guidebook that the evil satanic paedophiles are following. Okay? Look it up. I've showed it to some of my friends. They cannot believe it when they read it because they're like, what the fuck? This describes exactly. Okay? You'll find it in the FBI files. It was accidentally tweeted as an FOI, Freedom of Information thing. Someone else has used this knowledge for very dark purposes and has created a set of protocols which allow you to control the world. Like Marxism is part of it. And one of the things it says, institute liberal democracy, then socialism, then communism, then despotism. And that's, we are in the socialist phase. The next phase, and this is where we're getting this pushback, is to institute communism and then the despotism. And you were saying, look, it can't be that bad because, you know, in the Soviet Union, they had the starvation. Mm-hmm. What's the attack on farmers? Why are farmers all across the world complaining that they are under attack by governments? Why are chicken sheds being burned down in acts of arson? Why are farmers under assault? Because they're moving towards that starvation, despotism, Soviet Union model. Like, look up the Holodomor. It's fucking vile. At a skate park near where I go, there was posters saying, "Are you a communist? Join the Communist Party." Mm-hmm. So I went round and took down every motherfucking one and put them in the bin. Because I just don't understand. Like, I do understand, because what they're doing is weaponising people's compassion. In the same way that the migrant crisis is being weaponised, because it's like, oh, you don't want to be mean to these people, but so let's just keep letting them in so that they all drown in the channel. It's fucking horrible what's happening either way. Like, I feel for them. And they're just being used as pawns in some game by these evil overlords. It's deliberate. It's very, very, very deliberate. And it's towards a specific goal. And the reason why we're seeing everything accelerating now is because they've got a specific date that they need to have achieved by, which is 2030.
Which is why you keep seeing that in the WEF and all the different, and the WHO.
Yeah.
It's always 2030.
World Economic Forum. Have you seen like the 3 O's and the swipe through them?
I can't picture it, if I'm honest.
This is World Economic Forum. Each word has an O in it, and the words are staggered so that the O's are just sort of above each other, and then there's a circle that cuts through them,
right,
like a crescent moon, that turns them all into 6s. So the reason why 2030 is important, a lot of it goes back to this ancient technology, the ancient aliens, because whether or not you believe that there's crazy shit buried in the Middle East, these people certainly do. They are looking for something under the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock. They're looking for the Ark of the Covenant. They always have been. The Templars. We just had Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is famous because that was the night when King Louis of France had all the Templars arrested. But on the night of Thursday the 12th, the Templar fleet sailed into the night. No one knew where they went. People have their suspicions that they went to the Americas, probably to Oak Island. You ever watch The Curse of Oak Island? Where they dig. They took the Templar treasures, the Ark of the Covenant, powerful ancient technology.
Was the Ark of the Covenant, isn't that something to do with nuclear power?
Billy Carson does a really great bit on this. I love Billy Carson. He's such a G. And the way he tells the stories is funny as well. I just love him. He's great. But he describes, if you look in the biblical text and how they describe, the Ark of the Covenant was stolen by one tribe. And then they all got blisters, radiation burns,
I've heard
and they returned it back to the Israelites. The Ark of the Covenant is lined with gold, which is a very dense metal, which would actually, you know, Moses put the tablets in there and had these gold things on it, and it had to be covered. The people that carried it had to have like chest plates, metal plates, like, you know, when the X-ray technician. It sounds very much like ancient technology. And when you go right back to the Sumerian texts, there are these things called the Mayas. And there's a list of 60 different things that were basically bits of tech the aliens had left, people have picked up. And like, I was very skeptical of this whole idea because, you know, for the last year or so, Tucker Carlson's been going on about the UFO, the UAP phenomena, and how it's angels and demons and it's spiritual stuff. Right. And I was kind of like, you know, and now I'm completely in. It's like, oh no, the aliens have been here for a while. They themselves have been playing the same game that we're playing of kind of like good and evil, control and freedom. And they've, you know, there's been technology and items that have been found. I think that this whole race is because they're trying to fulfill some prophecy about 2030. They want to have a king on the throne in 2030 to one world government. And that's what they want, the Team Eagle.
It makes sense that they're pushing towards a certain timeline because it feels quite rushed. A lot of what happens when people say, oh, there's a group that are trying to control and move the world in a certain way, and they're trying to destroy farms, a lot of this is discussed like in our groups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, can see it, but often I look at it and I think like they fumble so much shit. They're not smart. They make so many fucking mistakes, and they make things so messy. It feels to me like someone's rushing something. You know, you make mistakes under pressure when you're rushing. And that's how it feels. It's like they're fumbling around. And that would make sense then if they're going for a certain date and there's all this thing around 2030 and blah, blah, blah. So the groups that are trying to do that, would you say then they are satanic, or are they something different?
They worship Lucifer, Satan, Enlil, I would say. So, it goes right back to the Anunnaki, and they have a trilogy of gods. You've got Un, who's like ultimate god. He doesn't seem to be active, so I think he's kind of like Big G, God the creator, not actually there. He's the head of the design, the creator. My bit read on God the creator, God the architect, is he's actually outside of this universe. He created the universe with chaos built into the code. The whole quantum superposition stuff, where it's not a particle traveling in a straight line, isn't a particle in a straight line. It turns into a wave. And then it has potential things that it could be, and then it chooses one of those possible outcomes. Einstein said God doesn't play dice. No, God put dice in the game and he's watching. God is enjoying it because he doesn't quite know how it's going to work out.
There's a randomness, inbuilt randomness. Yeah. Which is why probably the world is so fucking weird and interesting.
Yeah.
Because it is so like some things that happen, you're like, what the fuck?
Consider yourself as a creator. Are you going to make, if you were making a thing to watch, would you make it so that you knew exactly what was going to happen?
No.
What's the point in making something? You make a simulation, you run a simulation because you want to see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's what this simulation, it is a kind of simulation, it is also real. This simulation is not predetermined. I actually think there are entities on a higher plane that are gambling. I've seen this in some of my visions, like in the episode Cancelled by South Park, where they're all watching Earth. And they're like, we put zebras, humans and Jews on the same planet. It's fucking hilarious. But I feel like it's kind of like that in that there are people betting on it. And of course there are people interfering as well. The trilogy of Anunnaki gods, Un, who I think is the creator, who's aloof and is just watching it. And then you've got these two sons, and Enlil and Enki. Okay, now Enlil is like the god of the sky. He's represented by the eagle. Okay, he is law and order. He's the American Empire. He's the German Empire. The eagle appears everywhere as a symbol. Okay, the eagle is the god of the sky. He's god of the air. He's god of storms. So Thor is Enlil. Then there's his brother. Could be older, could be younger, depending on which tablet you read. Yeah. Who is the snake? Enki, Loki. Okay, the snake is close to the ground. He's also god of the seas as well, like the sea serpent. So he's kind of like, Mother Earth, the land, and the other one's the sky and the storms. Okay, Thor is a storm god. Loki is a shapeshifter, but he's a trickster, and that's a nice take on it. But you'll see variations on the eagle and the snake throughout. Even in fucking Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear is based on Buzz Aldrin, who flew Eagle 1 to the moon. And Woody, I've got a snake in my boot. And you've got Gryffindor, which is the eagle and the lion, and you've got Slytherin, the snake. The whole eagle-snake thing is a big theme. And it makes you think that there's only two sides of the story. There's the authoritarian sky people who are like, no, we must have law and order, or there's the chaotic snake people. If you think of the Gadsden flag, don't tread on me, that's a snake. The snake is not necessarily a bad symbol. The snake people just want to be left alone. They want freedom and autonomy, and the sky people want civilization and order and structure. And they're both kind of right and they're both completely wrong. In the middle, there's actually a third group. There's the hybrid group who don't want anything to do with either side. They just want to be left alone. But what do you get when you cross a winged eagle with a serpent. You put wings on a snake, what do you get? A flying serpent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dragon. You know, and you see this in the Caduceus, you'll see this symbolised. To me, the dragon is a representation of the eternal battle between these two sides of freedom and law and order. And actually, I hate both of them. Like, the battle is worse than the complete control or the complete freedom. The constant battle between them is terrible. And I see myself as like a dragon slayer by creating a set of rules that allow a certain amount of freedom, but a certain amount of law and order, which is kind of weird because one of the things I've come across is the idea that names are really powerful. So my name, my origin, my dad's from Turkey. St. George was Turkish. He was a dragon slayer. My middle name is Derek, which is derived from Theodoric. St. Theodore was also a dragon slayer. Siegfried of Doric was also a legendary Norse dragon slayer. So I've got a lot of dragon slaying.
You slay some dragons.
In my... got a lot of that in my name. And even my surname, my born surname is really weird because they don't have surnames in Turkey until a law was passed in 1932, which made people have surnames.
For tax reasons.
Probably. Or it's more about, like, they say it was for, like, tracking historical and things like that. But my granddad, or my great-granddad, I don't know. I have since reached out to my dad and tried to sort of forgive him and, like, see if he knew anything about this, but not had anything yet. But my granddad or great-granddad chose a very, very specific name, which basically translates as keeper of the unwritten rules, keeper of the customs, keeper of the secrets. Whereas most people opted for a name that was kind of like son of. You know, most Turkish people have a name that ends in aglu. Okay. And aglu means son of. So it's kind of like that Nordic tradition of like Thor, Odinson, something like that. So, yeah, I feel like I'm the dragon slayer. Anyway, I'm deviating from the point here. The point was that when Karl Marx or whoever he was, Enlil, the representative of Team Eagle, when he was talking to me, he was like, no, look, you don't understand. We are the good guys. Look, yes, sure, people are going to die in the establishment of this order, but we need that. They had a hand in the fucking French Revolution. Robespierre, he came up with the phrase, you need to break a few eggs to make an omelette. That's what they believe. They don't believe that they're evil. They believe that they are trying to establish an order for the good of people.
They believe that making the population starve, taking control of all assets.
Thanos. Think of Thanos.
Yeah, but Thanos just wanted to get half the world gone.
But he would kill, before he got the gauntlet, he would murder half of the people. And he did it for the reasons of trying to bring peace and stability to the universe.
Yeah, Thanos, but there's much, much simpler ways to kill half the fucking
But look at the psychology of him himself. He didn't think he was evil. No. He thought he was right. He thought he was good. You've got to, like, whilst you don't understand it, you've got to, like, put yourself in the mind of the evil people and understand that they don't think they're evil.
No, but what I'm saying is, even if they don't think they're evil, there are much more efficient ways. If your goal is, I want to kill half the planet, or Thanos, half the universe, but people on the Earth, half the planet, much more efficient ways to do it than fucking trying to do all the weird shit they're doing at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're starving people. They're attacking farmers to starve them to death. They're using fake medical pharmaceutical interventions to lower people's fertility. They're encouraging behaviours like that reduce people's chances of conceiving by, you know, indulging in non-conceptual sex, you know, sex that isn't going to produce a child, or by literally mutilating yourself in a way that sterilises you. They're encouraging anything they can to reduce world population.
So they're just...
And in their mind, they're not killing people. They're just stopping them from breeding. That's quite humane. If you've got a population of stray dogs, what do? You go out, you don't go and kill them all, but you go out and neuter them all. You know, that's the humane thing to do. That's how they see it.
Okay.
And I'm not advocating for it. Neither was Max. He was like, I don't advocate for this. I'm just telling you this is how it is. And I believed it. He didn't think he was evil. He thought he was doing the right thing. And, you know, the same side, you know, I obviously have more affiliation with Team Snake. I'm much likely to fly a Gadsden flag than I am an Eagle flag. I'm more affiliated with Team Snake, but at the same time, I don't see myself as either. I am definitely chaotic and in the middle. So anyway, getting back to the story. So I'm sitting there and I'm now debating about rules, laws, communism, capitalism with this demon.
What made you think he was a demon rather than just he's a weird fucking Russian guy?
The thing that he knew I was jerking off, there was no way he could have known
You
I
had
was.
cum on your head.
I never finished. I was, I'd had some MD. It don't work. I got dressed and come out, and I wasn't sitting there with a massive boner. I just looked normal. There's no way he could have known that but he knew. And he threatened me that I was going to go to hell.
Okay.
Where I could be a little wanking demon in the depths of hell. Like, that's what he said. And I was like, that's a very oddly specific thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, but that wasn't what convinced me. It was then he started talking about rules and laws and capitalism and communism. And then I looked at him and I goes, you don't need all those. You only need 4 laws. And he was angry at that concept. He did not like my concept of only 4 laws.
Yeah.
We sort of went back and forth a bit. I can't, and someone called me into the tent, I think, for a bump or something. And I went in, I opened the tent, and there's cousin John, not my cousin, my wife's cousin John. And he is just standing there and he's pretty fucked. He's like chattering, like coming up real hard. But he looks at me and goes, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And I'm like, dude, are you hearing what I'm hearing? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, he's a demon. He's a fucking demon. And he just looks at me and goes, get rid of him. Get rid of him. And I'm like, but can you confirm? Like, he's saying some really fucking weird shit. And he's like, yes, go and get rid of him. Okay. So I just I'm like, thank fuck it's not just me. Yeah. Like, so I walk out and I'm like, I'm really sorry, Max. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Yeah. And he goes, what? Really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't at the moment. I really just need you to go. I'm sorry, buddy. Really polite, really nice. And he goes, okay, gets up and leaves. My missus and her friends are like, well, they weren't involved in that conversation. They weren't paying attention. They're flitting around. Yeah. And they're like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm like, I don't think I said to them. I was just like, he was saying really weird stuff and I just couldn't handle it. Yeah. So they're like, you're being weird to me. And then everyone fucks off. And I'm left there and with my wife's best friend, Rachel. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, not really. That was really weird. I'm now questioning reality. Is anyone who they say they are? And I look at her and I'm like, the moment I look at her, she looks different. And I'm like, and who the fuck are you right now? And she starts laughing. And I'm like, you're Loki. And then she's laughing. She's just laughing. And then we have a full-on conversation at this point where I'm like, like, what the hell was that? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, he was like a demon. And she was like, yeah. I was like, you didn't like that. And then when I sort of said, you're Loki, she didn't confirm or deny it, just laughed. But it didn't even look like, it looked like her, but like, she's not hot, but there was something really fucking sexy about her all of a sudden. The
sexy demon.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is Loki we're talking about, the shapeshifter. It was really bizarre. But I asked questions, and she just answered them straight up. And then she popped in and out over the rest of the weekend. So I managed to ask a few questions. Like, I was like, does Rachel know? She was like, no. I just jump in, fuck shit up, and bugger off again.
Hold on. When you say she would jump in and out, you mean you would suddenly see that she...
If it was no one else around, I'd ask a question and,
Have you ever asked Rachel, Rachel?
I have. I asked Rachel, do you remember the conversation that we had? She was like, not really. I was like, I bet you remember this bit and that bit. She was like, yeah. It was like, obviously the bits that are going to kind of make me look stupid and embarrassing, look, I'll tell you about afterwards. She remembers some bits, but she doesn't remember the conversation. And it's that kind of thing, like when you're drunk and stuff and you're in and out and it's like they puppeteer you in that moment. But I had a full-on detailed conversation with some kind of entity who I, at the time, described as Loki. Now I think it's Enki. At the time, it was like, I just spoke with Karl Marx and Loki, but now I know that those characters go back to ancient Sumer with Enlil and Enki, the two brothers. I don't think they are gods, as in Big G. I think they're kind of entities with some crazy technology.
So when you're
playing.
asking these questions to the body of this girl, but potentially the mind spirit of something else, were the questions that you were asking...
can remember some bits accurately.
My question is specific. Were the questions that you were asking possible that she could have answered within her normal human
If she
self?
did, she was being a cunt because she was basically playing along and making me feel insane.
But what I'm saying is, like, for example, if I was possessed by a demon and you were asking that demon very specific questions about chemistry.
Oh, there was nothing like that that
That
was...
she could have... Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, there was no revelatory thing because they didn't, like, all I sort of went, oh my God, so I'm right about it. Like, you know, and I even said, like, the Anunnaki and all that, and she went, yep. And I was like, what about all these other people, like Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, just pawns? I was like, this is so fucked. This is, like, you know, I didn't really get any useful information. I did ask questions like, why are you doing this? Why are you picking on us? Like, what's your relationship to me and my wife? And kept on saying, there was one phrase that said repeatedly was, those I love dearly, and I love you both. Said that a couple of times. Those I love dearly, and I love you both. I was like, what about, you know, my wife? What's this got, you know, because she's my wife's good friend in this body. And I at that time, I thought it was permanently that she was always Loki. I didn't realise that it was a sort of possession thing. Right. I thought she was her all along. And I was like, why are you hanging around with my wife? It's like, she's my person. Obviously, Loki is a god of chaos and mischief. And my wife is chaotic as fuck. You know that whole grid, the 9-box grid? You got the lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good.
Not really.
Oh, it's a Dungeons and Dragons thing. If you're going to create a character, they have 2 axes. So they're either good, neutral, or evil. And then there are another 3, which is they are lawful, neutral, or unlawful.
Right.
So the worst is like unlawful evil, which is like, you know, but you've got lawful evil, you know, like Keir Starmer. But you've also got like...
You could have like chaotic good.
Yeah, and unlawful good. Yeah. And the conversation, because Loki, Enki, is a chaos god, kind of made me think that, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to be on the good guys team or the bad guys team, obviously, but maybe we're just in that chaotic middle ground. You know, and that matches very much up with the symbolism of the dragon, which is kind of a combination of both Team Snake and Team Eagle. Your
life is always more chaotic.
Yeah.
The type of thing that happens to you in a normal, just like it's a throwaway story or something, would be like an extremely crazy part of my life.
Yeah.
You have a much more chaotic life.
Wait till I tell you about Friday.
Right. So that would make, my point is that would make sense.
Yeah. And since we've adopted, both of us, like my wife's taken a while to sort of come along to this, but, you know, one of the things that I've had to explain to her, the principle of rhythm is that there is a flow that is natural, you know, and if you go with the flow, if you are but a leaf on the stream, you get taken to much more interesting places. Whereas if you try and fight against the flow, you become a rock in the river and you get battered. And she... You know, like, you know, when we have a party or a session, she doesn't like to let it end. She likes to long it out. She likes to try and control the situation. It doesn't work. It collapses. Whereas if you follow the flow, it tends to be much better. And as we've started following the flow, our lives have changed. Things are working much better for us. You know, things come into our lives that are just so much fun and so enjoyable and just things you've always wanted, but now they just come to you. They just present themselves because you're just going with the flow. You recognise the principle of rhythm, that everything swings like a pendulum. And if you move with that natural rhythm, you're going to have a much better time. One of the things that really made a lot of sense to me was, you know, once I started to believe in Satan worshippers in political situations, which I think is quite a reasonable thing to believe in.
Yeah.
And then I started believing in gods and aliens. Then I'm like, well, I mean, I might as well just go all in. Like, is magic real? And I actually do believe, like, one of the things even before I started on this crazy descent, Let's call it an ascent instead.
Yeah.
Because I do believe it is towards enlightenment. I do think it is about trying to open your mind, to join up the dots, to become enlightened and become a better version of yourself. And that's, ultimately, I keep saying this to my wife, I know it's insane, but look at how I'm acting and behaving. Is it not better? And she's like, yeah, but it's just weird. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's weird, but is it better? And she's like, yeah, things are way better.
Better in what sense?
Like, I'm nicer, I'm happier.
But you've always been nice.
I know, but things are better. I feel more enlightened and behaving in a much more natural way. Things are happening better.
Kinder to more people.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I'm just going with the flow. Like, I didn't want to buy another cat last year. Our neighbours had kittens. My wife desperately wanted one. And I was like, no. We've already got a grumpy old cat. She'll hate a kitten. When we got married, I read that it was a Norse tradition to buy your wife a kitten to honour the goddess Freya, goddess of love. Right. She has cats all around her, chariots pulled by cats. And so, as a husband, you buy your wife a kitten to help her build the household. So I saw this and I just looked online, found some kittens nearby, and I went and there were 2 kittens and one of them was really fighty. And I was like, well, obviously I'm taking you. Paid 50 quid, got this kitten, brought it home. Completely going with the flow, completely against my natural, last year I didn't want to do it, but I was just like, there you go. She just bawled her eyes out, loved it. I'm just going with the flow. And then a couple of weeks later, I'm clearing up my tabs and I'm like, oh, the sister's still available. And I said, the other one's still available. She's like, well, let's go and get it. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we buy. So going from I don't want any kittens because the old cat's going to be grumpy, and she is. She fucking hates them. She hisses at them all the time. To getting 2 new black kittens. Yeah. And they are amazing. And they are magic multipliers. One of the things that I've been doing, and I say this in Inspector Gadget stumbling, very accidental shamanism, also been doing accidental magic. So a lot of the things I would do, and after I'd done it, I'd look back on it and go, holy shit, that was on a very specific date. It was the first day of this new season in the pagan wheel of the year on a full moon, on a super moon and stuff like that. So I said there was that night when they
Oh, you absolute cunt.
Just for the record, a dog just walked in and did horrible shit. Do you want to pause?
You fucking... Why didn't you go outside? This is what... Oh my God, it stinks.
Come on, man. He's a dog.
He's an absolute...
I know, he's a disgusting animal.
He's not my dog as well.
I know, but he's like a kid. You can't be mad at him.
No, I can.
I know, but it's not good for you.
What is happening? Why does he have to literally walk through? Because the door is open, he has to shit in the fucking... Fuck. Mate, honestly, I'm so sick of this shit. If it's not one of the kids, it's one of the dogs. There's always shit and piss and vomit everywhere.
I'll tell you one thing that helps me with this kind of stuff.
Oh, you can fuck off out there. In. Get in. Absolutely ridiculous.
He's obviously got a bad summer.
No, he hasn't. He's just a cunt.
You reckon?
Yeah. No, he is. He's just a cunt. I know him well enough. I'll do that.
I love how you've got that all recorded.
Just this house, try and work here, and it's crying and screaming and shitting and vomiting and mess and chaos. I find the chaos, I'm like a little bit autistic.
A little bit? Gee.
I'm very specific about the way that I like things.
Yeah.
I have to work with it and learn to live with it. But oh my God.
You got to remember that each moment never repeats. I mean, I know you cleaned up shit a bunch of times.
Every day.
Yeah. But there will be a time when you're on your own, dogs are gone, kids have moved out, and you just kind of you will miss it.
Maybe.
You will.
Maybe. I think a lot of the time, though, you miss things like that when you're older, especially because as you get older and you have less responsibilities and less tasks, you have more time. And at the time when you have more time is when you'd want to take on the tasks and be around the people. But at the moment, it's when a dog shits on my floor or the kids need something, it's not like they just need something. It's also, I have 50 other tasks that needed doing 3 days ago, and the bills are coming in and all the things. So it's like, it's when it's all together. And then when you're older, I think you reminisce and you go, wasn't it nice when we had such and such? You're like, it would be if you didn't have the other 50 things. I think that sometimes you reminisce and how you recall the past is not quite.
You do look back with rose-tinted glasses, but at the same time, there'll come a point when you'll realise that life is not a destination. It's not about achieving something. It's about the journey you go on, the experiences, the fucking up, getting things wrong, and then the ability to get it right. I know it's like, it probably is hard, because they're quite big dogs, and that was quite a disgusting turd on the floor.
Like what? It came through like a fucking creature.
I knew he was going to shit. Like, you could see on the way he was walking. At the same time, you got to kind of view it from his point of view. He was laying there, and he's just like, oh, I don't feel good. And he was going for the garden, but he still shat on the floor. Like, you just got to be compassionate and just put yourself in the mind of the dog. Like, he was going for the door. You can't be, like, if you get angry at him, like, imagine that you were running to the toilet and you shit on the stairs and your wife was just like, you're a dick. You're just shouting at you, like, I feel ill. You know, you got to put yourself, but like...
I'd be upset with her if she did that and it was my first time, but when it's every fucking day. When it's every day. And I've been trying to record and they're scratching at the door and they want to come in and they want to go out. And
I think you should leave that bit in anyway.
I will.
The whole thing, me going up to the toilet, like the separate mics, just leave it all in. But yeah, no, I don't know. Like, I try and enjoy everything. It's quite tough to do. But like, just, I don't know. I have a good ability to sort of empathise. I guess, you know, even going back to the tangent we were on, like, it is true that the other side don't see themselves as evil. They do think they're trying to establish order. Which is why, you know, like, if there's something in Star Wars. I'm not a big fan of Star Wars, but I remember someone saying something like, we don't think the Jedi or the Sith are the good guys because you're just a couple of wizards running around destroying planets and fighting each other, and we all get murked over because of it. And that's exactly how I feel about this kind of eagle and the snake. You know, I see it as like people in the middle just want war to end. We just want an end to war. We want some rules, but we want some freedoms. We want a bit of both. We're not completely totalitarian and we're not complete anarchists. You know, there are people on either side. I mean, I'm more to that side, but I'm definitely a different category. I believe that there should be some law and order. You know, obviously I'm trying to write up like this idea of a system, you know, 4 laws, Declaration of Rights. In addition to that, I think police officers should be nominated. I don't think you should be able to apply to be a policeman. I think you should be nominated as a policeman.
It pulls weirdos in.
Yeah, well, anyone seeking power, same with politics. I don't think you should be allowed to apply. I think you'd be nominated as a...
I think that's how it would probably have been, like, when you had elders. There's people in your life, right, who you interact with, and then you will naturally go to them for certain things because you know that if you need someone reliable and responsible and wise, you go to a certain person. And you want to just go and have some fun and be creative, you go to another person. So you naturally have these people that are good at certain things. Or you naturally have people who are like just really good at listening. Like you could go to someone and they're like not going to judge. You go to them with and talk to them and they're really good at that. That's what I think would naturally happen. And you'd have someone who would be naturally in a group, the one who kind of polices things and goes, whoa.
Yeah,
no, you're being a cunt now. Yeah. Come on. No. I think that's how it naturally would have been anyway. You naturally find a bit of a balance. And in a group anyway, you're naturally going to have, hang on a minute, this bloke never does any work.
Yeah.
He's always a fucking arsehole. He's always rude. He doesn't contribute. No. And they would be fucked off. They wouldn't go to prison and they wouldn't go through like a system. It'd just be like, you're not having any more food anymore. You can fuck off. You do your own thing. If you want to come and be a civilized person, you come and you apologise and, you know, maybe we'll reconsider. But until then, fuck off. That's kind of what policing probably would have...
All public service. It should be by nomination. It should be extremely well paid. And if you do anything wrong, you are immediately barred permanently.
Yeah.
Like, you're granted this position by society. You're nominated for it. if you make a mistake and fuck up and you do something that's malicious, like, it has to be proven that it wasn't accidental, you derelicted your office, you brought it into disrepute in some way, and you go, okay, sorry, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And you never will be, because, it's a position of trust. And that's it. Like, that brings, because there's no accountability for politicians or leaders or police officers. It's like, oh, we investigated ourselves and we found ourselves innocent.
We were all right.
Yeah, we investigated.
Don't worry about us.
Yeah. But anyway, so basically going back to the entities, I had a very short interaction with the Eagle, Karl Marx, Max, whatever you want to call him.
That's the Russian guy.
Yes.
Okay. And each time they're in the body of someone you know.
Yeah, well, like I went the next day and I said, what do I do? Because American John was still in the tent when I'm talking to Loki. So this was the thing that really fucked me up. I was like, the next day, I was like, yo, did you hear that conversation I had with Rachel? And he was like, yes. And I was like, she was being really weird. He was like, yeah. Either she was fucking with you and trying to make you happy. Because after that conversation, I have never been so terrified. Because I was like, either I cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. Like, I've had hallucinations before, but it's a hallucination. Things are weirdly melting and moving.
Yeah.
This was real. This was absolutely perfectly real. And it was a direct conversation with people that weren't the people that they are, knowing, like, things they kind of unknowable, things that are nothing to do with them. And I'm just like, either I'm insane or there is really the ability to possess human beings and someone's possessing them, either aliens or gods or something, or both, which is what I'd settle on. I believe there's only one absolute being. I think everyone else is just ascended at different levels of technology and spiritualism and mentalism. Creator created this universe, might be gambling on this universe with a load of beings at that level.
So do you think that the people who are trying to control things are also trying to gather or get hold of technology that makes them, 100%. That pushes them further up?
Mate, there's so many examples of occultism in political leadership. There's the famous sort of the whole Castle Wolfenstein Nazi thing of occult practices, looking for the spear of destiny, the UFOs, Antarctica, Agartha, this underground city that you go in through Antarctica. The idea is that there's a lot of secret societies throughout history who are aware of this, the fact that aliens have been here and are seeking the technology like the Ark of the Covenant, the Spear of Destiny, etc., etc. They're after these bits of ancient technology, which is such a far-fetched idea. But then here's one that really sold it to me as a scientist. Okay, at some point, our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, collided with a much smaller galaxy. So if you imagine our galaxy is like a compact disc, that's probably an outdated reference. What's about that big? Like a saucer.
Yeah, a compact disc is...
Yeah, a DVD. People might know what that size is. Our galaxy is like the size of a DVD. And then you've got the Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy, which is like the size of a £2 coin or a 50p.
Right.
Okay? Gravitationally, they are attracted. The Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy collides with the Milky Way Galaxy. Mm-hmm. This is established, proven scientific fact. Mm-hmm. You can look into it because gravity waves can be measured. Our galaxy is still wobbling from the impact. Now, when we say galaxies collide, galaxies are mostly empty space like atoms are. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's not that stars and planets are smashing into each other. Most of it's empty space. So most of what happens is the galaxy passes through. You probably get a couple of collisions every now and then, but most of it's gravitational interactions. So this galaxy goes through ours. Now, here's what's interesting. The intersection point where Sagittarius Dwarf hits the Milky Way is exactly on the part of the track, distance from the centre, exactly where we are. So it's quite plausible that planets and maybe even stars or astronomical bodies from another galaxy are naturally implanted within ours. Maybe these people achieved a type 3 civilization on the Kardashev scale. So type 1 is you harness the entire power of the Earth. Type 2 is that you harness the entire power of the sun. Type 3 is you harness the entire power of your galaxy.
The sun being your sun.
Your sun, yeah. And then there's type 4, which is you harness the power of the entire universe. When I said earlier that life is a game, I believe it is a race game to get to stage 4. And
stage 4 is effectively God.
God. That's the whole point. You've got to become God. And there's 2 ways of doing it. One is by working externally to control and take up the power of the entire universe, and then you become God by having control of the universe. Or you can go internally, and by service, you can ascend to godlike levels through enlightenment. So I believe that some people have already left this universe and ascended to the next level and become sort of, maybe not equals to the creator, but like they've certainly ascended to a level, and they've probably been given roles as deities and sort of powerful entities that then can interfere with this level, but are then probably on another game, and probably at another level of the game that probably there's more levels as above, so below. And there are levels below because I've been put in them in some of my K trips. This is why I don't really want to do any more and go back, because the last couple were kind of not very nice.
Can you talk about them at all? Or?
Yeah, like it was a very easy one to discuss. It was, okay, you're back, are you? But like, have you not got enough? Okay, look, I'm just going to show you some shit that you don't really need to see. I'm going to put you in lower dimensions. And I was kind of like atoms or carpet or, it was really boring. It was just seeing life from a lower level and lower dimension. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I keep going back at some point, I'm going to see some stuff I really don't want to see, some horrific, like nasty stuff. Like you've seen some of this, you've seen some of that. This was just kind of like really boring. It was just like this is what it's like to be on a lower dimension, because we are at a specific strata, a bit specific level, but there are levels below us.
As a human being, we are.
Everything has some consciousness, right? There was a really interesting lady on Joe Rogan recently who was talking about what is life, and she talks about the complexity. So this glass that you've given me exists now, but it existed in time before now. So it has time built into it. At some point this was forged into a glass. Yeah. At that point, it created a physical form. But before that, it was sand. And, before that, it was shells of sea creatures. Before that, there's a lot of stuff that's gone into it. So it does have a certain level of consciousness.
Is that consciousness, or is that just it's a history of what materials it was previously?
Yeah. But it has a kind of spirit. If like, you'd be really arrogant to assume that just because you're a human, you are the only thing with a spirit.
No, I've never thought that.
Dogs and cats.
Yeah. I've spent enough, although I'm annoyed at that dog, which is not my dog. Yeah. And that's the same dog that has gone for my kid. So I have a layer of hatred built in for that dog. With my dog, and with other dogs that have been mine and like family dogs, they definitely have spirit, or like, I don't know whether soul is the right word or whatever it is, but when people say only human beings like think in the way we do, I don't buy that at all, because you can have almost conversations with dogs. They know what you're saying to them, and you have like a level of understanding. Well, if you imagine,
you remember I was talking about my first ever ketamine fight like 20 odd years ago, where I saw myself as a dust spiral of coloured particles. Well, if I make something from, like if I take a piece of wood from a tree, that tree has a life. It's a living thing. That has a very limited soul and consciousness, but it does have something. I can take a piece of wood and carve it. And what I'm doing is I'm imbuing the soul of the tree with some extra soul of my own to create something. If I carve something out of wood and create a little statue or something like that, when you hold a carved piece of wood, you feel something. You feel a connection, because it's a piece of wood, but it's a piece of art by a person. You put a bit of your soul into it. Mm-hmm. I really feel that. Like everything has some kind of level of consciousness or soul, even a rock. And this is going back to like the Star Wars thing again, with the Force. Like everything has the Force running through it. Because in Hermetic wisdom, Hermes Thoth, his name for God was Atum, A-T-U-M, okay, which is very similar to the word atom. In fact, that's why I believe it's Democritus who came up with the idea of the atomic structure, that everything is made of indivisible particles, which he called atoms, because God is the universe. This universalist theory. Like, the universe is God and God is the universe, and you are a part of the universe, and you are a part of God. You are created from the atoms that came from the Big Bang. And those atoms have arranged themselves in a complex pattern so they've become self-aware, and now they are able to sense the world around. Now, it doesn't mean that your sensation and mine's the same. Do you remember, like, some people at primary or secondary school would go, hey, imagine if you saw red as green and I saw red as blue, but we'd all call it red because I hold up the thing, and even though we see it as slightly different colours, we get the same name, so we always refer to it the same. That's very, very likely that that is actually true.
I think that's definitely true. The way that you view the world is definitely different.
Well, you have observed what it's like to have a baby, and that you can see their software being developed.
Like day one,
Yep.
and it only accelerates. They are completely different animals.
Yeah.
They've been brought up in the same way, been brought up in the same house. They eat the
Same
food,
DNA sources, same mum, same dad.
same everything, but they are completely different animals.
And there's some elements of nurture to that, because you as parents on the first one are nervous, panicky.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure
then the
we're
second child, you're a lot more laissez-faire and laid back. So the second child's always kind of a bit more chilled out. There's less tension, stress around it. So it doesn't feed that tension and stress into its programming. But essentially the brain's kind of blank, and it has to develop its own neural networks and connections. And it starts to develop its own model of the world. I'm sure that everyone's operating system is slightly different.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
We're all kind of like phones. We have the same hardware. We have cameras, hard drives and screens and things like that. But the operating system and the specific apps that are installed and the way everything connects is all unique to that one particular phone, that one particular human. So we are quite unique. We are distinctive in our own way. Our sensation, the world that you think exists, doesn't actually exist. I could quite easily be a brain in a jar in a laboratory with wires attached to my optic nerve, my auditory nerve, my spinal column, kind of, what is it, RoboCop, when you see the brain in the jar. You could be easily just providing stimulant information through electrical signals that my brain interprets.
Yeah, if you, like you were saying, what you imagine is real. In essence, it is real because you're imagining it and you're seeing it and you're feeling it. So
we think we see things, but actually what we're seeing is light scattering off of objects. That's a mirage. We're not seeing this object is not emitting light, but what happened is light coming from the sources of light is hitting it, scattering off it. So what I'm seeing is a kind of effect, Raman scattering off of the surfaces. You're not seeing the object, you're seeing the effect of radiation interacting with that surface, and then you're interpreting it in your own eyes. You're creating a simulation of the world through all these different bits of information that you're taking in.
And the way you perceive things is different because of the way that your value system or your whatever it is, like the way you think about things is different.
And I strongly believe that if you believe that something is possible, it is. And if you don't believe it's possible, you're right as well. Whether you believe you're right, whether you believe something's possible or impossible, you are right. And all this crazy shit that has happened to me had to start with me going, no, this is possible, and destroying the limits of my scientific education, which said, no, this is not possible. This is not real. It really started off quite slow, and it just accelerated. Like, I started to believe in the gods, the Norse gods. And I remember just stepping out to let the dogs out for a wee, and there's a fucking dog's eye around the moon. I think it's ice particles suspended in the atmosphere. And it creates this ring around the moon, full moon with a ring around it. I'm like, it's the eye of the gods. It's Odin's eye. It looked to me, it was an omen, and I took it as an omen. And it's like, things started happening because you believe. If you think the world is really boring and simple, guess what? It's going to be that way.
Yeah.
If you think the world is full of wonder and Loch Ness monsters and Bigfoot and aliens, like I used to when I was a kid and now I do now, guess what? It is. So that's the principle of mentalism. But so I think what kind of happened was the fact that I was open to this experience meant that at that festival, specifically at the festival, because there are rules at this kind of thing, I did ask that question of Loki. I was like, is this because it's at this festival? Is this a special place? You know, a lot of people at the festival, they, you know, on stage, they say, these are hallowed grounds. Right. And I remember the first year I went, I was like, I feel like this has been a site for festivities for thousands of years. But I do think there's something about the gathering of people at a festivity, which means even the gods can come down. You see it in Back to the Future 3, where Biff goes to the dance and he has to check his weapons in.
Right.
But they don't throw him out. Even when he has got a gun, the sheriff just takes his gun off him and says, you know, that's the rules. Yeah. Just leave your weapons at the door. It's a celebration. Everyone's allowed in, even the worst villain. And I think that was what happened at the festival, is that the rules were different. It's a festivity, and they were able to come in because there are sort of rules. They didn't do anything wrong, but I was fucking terrified, man. Like, after that, I don't really remember what, but I remember speaking to John, and he was like, yeah, I saw it. And he was freaking out. He just left. He couldn't handle what was going on. And I'm just sat there on my own, and I'm wrapped in a blanket, and I'm like, it's fucked up. Like, I don't know what's going on because my reality just went off.
So you're saying to this Loki, or whatever it is, Enki, why are you here? What are you doing? What's the point? Like, that's what I always think. Like,
yeah, why us? I asked why us, and the answer was, you know, those I love dearly, and I love you both. I think it's because we are chaotic. Always have been, always will be. And he's got a chaos, and he's just like, yeah, these are my people. But I was like, everyone, my wife came back and her friends, and they were like, you okay? And I was like, no, Max is a demon and Rachel's Loki. And everyone's like, what? And I just keep repeating that. And they're like, he's gone insane.
Yeah.
He's insane. And I'm like, I feel insane. I can't believe I'm saying this. It took me quite a while. Like, because obviously now I'm super suspicious of Rachel as well. Because I think she's been low-key all along. I think she's bullshitting.
Do you still think that?
Yeah, it was only the next day when I was sat by an ice cream truck and I asked, does Rachel know? And he went, no, I just jump in, fuck shit up, and then disappear again.
And so when you're saying, does Rachel know, and you buy the ice cream truck, you suddenly, they look different. You can just tell.
Well, I wouldn't even bother asking if other people were around. Because I said that. I remember saying that. I was like, will you talk normally like this in front of my wife? And they were like, yeah. And then when she was there, I was like, look, tell her, aren't you Loki? I'm like, no, I'm just Rachel. Like, you fucking cunt. You double crosser. So, wouldn't admit to it. So there's no point asking unless, like, again, it's that thing of making it deniable. Yeah. So, no, but like I say, Cousin John heard the whole fucking thing, and he wouldn't talk to me that night because he was like, that was fucking, he just went. But the next morning I was like, please, because I'm losing my mind. Yeah. Is that what happened? And he was like, yeah. And I was just like, that's fucked.
So he was like, yeah, you're asking, are you Enki or whatever, you're asking Loki, Enki. You're asking why, they're answering this really peculiar way. Mm-hmm. He sees it, and then you speak to her.
She didn't know he was there because he's inside the tent. So he's out of eye shot. It's only when I go into the tent and see him there. I keep forgetting he's there as well. Right.
But when you speak to her, the actual her...
Yeah, I've asked her the other day, like, since then, and it's like, she in and out remembers, like, bits and bobs, but not any of the specifics.
But she doesn't remember saying, like...
No.
Any of the stuff that the Enki thing.
Yeah.
And if, like, do you know her well enough? Like, for example, I know you well enough, and, like, a handful of people well enough, that if I really seriously said to you, like, I'm worried I'm going insane. If this is some sort of elaborate joke, and you're just fucking with me... Seriously, please be reasonable and have this conversation with me. Don't fucking go any further with this. Were you just pissing about? If I know that if I said that to you or other people, you'd be like, all right, okay, if it's really... If I was... Well, like or vice versa, if I was just playing a game.
I was clearly distressed. Like for me, like I've done a lot of drugs, and I've never once lost myself. I've seen it happen to people on strong doses of acid where they don't know who they are, they lose their ego and all that kind of stuff. I've never, ever, even in my most fucked, I'm just like stumbly and confused, but I always know who I am and where I am and what I'm doing. And I always know the difference between imagination and reality. This was the one time in my life where reality was so vivid, so clear, and at the same time completely insane that made no fucking sense. And it was a horrible moment, like just standing there in a blanket, shivering and just being like, because I was in shock. And that's why I was cold, because all my blood just went straight to my central organs, because the mental effect, you know, all my cortisol just shot up, my adrenaline was up, and my body just responded to the mental stress. You know, after a while, I sort of came out of the tent, went into the other tent where everyone was, where Loki was. But at this point, it's just not Loki, it's Rachel. And, you know, I kind of like calmed down a little bit. And I remember talking to, you know, cousin John the next day and going, what it means is it's all real. And that's terrifying, because if it was just me that saw it, I would be a lot more self-critical and going, oh no, I'm fucking insane. I've done too many drugs and I've blown a fuse. Yeah. But this motherfucker heard everything. And he backs me up. Like, he didn't want to the first night. Yeah. He's like, I don't even want to talk to you.
But he's someone you would trust to be like honest with stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, he is a Jew, so. But he the next day we had a proper conversation, and I was just like, I know I calmed him down because he was more scared than me. And I think that helped me, seeing that he was terrified as well. And I was like, look, everything's changed this morning, but it's exactly the same world. We know more about what the world we live in, but it was always that world. Any danger that we're in now, we were already in that danger before.
You just peered through a doorway. You've just seen an extra little. Yeah, I've never had anything that's like that dramatic. But when you talk about like possession or that kind of like you lose yourself. Like, she's lost herself. She's been taken over. I've had certainly times in my life where there are flashes where I'm like, the way I've just thought of the thing that I've just done is so out of character.
Yeah.
So dramatically out of character where I feel a different person. Whether that's I suddenly have like a surge of strength, like physical strength and anger that is outside of what I would normally feel, or I feel extremely powerful in a moment, or like I will do something that if I looked at it normally, if I looked at it in any other part of my life, I'd go, you would never do that.
I think they use the drunken state or the sort of imbibed state as plausible deniability. Well, let's put it this way. Like, Max didn't take drugs, doesn't take drugs. He was drinking, okay? He wasn't particularly drunk, but he must have been drunk enough for them to sort of switch in and out. But he kind of remembered, because the next day, I was like, what do I do about Max? And I was like, because at this point, I'm still thinking, I need to be good. I need to be good. I need to be good. So I go and apologise to him and forgive him. And he kind of remembers, you know, but I don't think he was. I think the next day when I went to say, I'm so sorry for telling you to leave, asking you to leave, he was like, it's okay. That's gone red.
Oh, it's probably the battery. It's all right. We got this one.
Okay. Next day when I'm asking him, you know, I said, sorry I asked you to leave. He's like, it's okay. You were polite. You didn't tell me to fuck off. And I was like, okay. We shared a little toast, little drink and stuff. And he was like, he was himself. And I was like, I just wasn't ready for that conversation about communism, capitalism. It was just a bit much for me at the time. It kind of upset me. I'm sorry about that. And he goes, no, I'm not defending these things. I'm just saying that's just how it is. But I don't think he was defending it in the same way. Yeah. It wasn't, he was just himself. So he did remember what he said. But like the weird specific stuff, like just, there was just it was so different, so weird. But yeah, again, like it's undeniable, but completely deniable. And I think that's deliberate. I think they use the fact that you're off your face or you're in a high stress situation because that's plausible deniability because it's easily written off. If you're completely stone cold sober and you say, I had an experience with an entity and you just happen to catch it on your video camera, that's, you know, they're fucked. You know, there's evidence. Yeah. But they don't want to be found out. So they kind of play around. Also, you have to be interesting enough for them to pay attention. And I think by this point, I've been doing enough accidental shamanism and I've learned enough and I'm coming up with ideas that are potentially a threat to the New World Order or also a real benefit to the libertarian snakes. So
they might show themselves.
So yeah, well, I'm already believing in them, so they've got nothing to lose at this point by showing themselves to me, because no one's going to fucking believe this story anyway. I didn't believe it. It was only because cousin John was there. Me and him are now so much closer because it's like we've been through a traumatic experience together. It was really bizarre. It was really frightening. Then they realised they couldn't get to me, so then they started attacking my friends, psychically attacking them. One of the things I've looked into is the idea of magic, because I do believe that there are spells. For example, if you look at remembrance, the whole point of remembrance is to make you forget. That's a psychological spell. Magic is basically psychology. Okay, it can be explained purely in a psychological realm. There's nothing magic about it. You can use the word magic, and it is. Never forget. We will remember. Remembrance Sunday. All this shit. What it's about is about putting the idea of people dying in war and how it's bad, localizing it to a single day, and then putting the words forget and remember, forget all over it, so you just forget about it. It's a brainwash. It's a brainwipe. It's a very transparent thing.
Do you know the one that really fucked? I talked about this on a pod the other day. During all the COVID bullshit, where people went out and they clapped on the balconies at a certain time. And I remember that trauma. I don't throw that around lightly. It made me so angry and distressed at that point. Like I literally wanted to go out and fucking murder people. I could see them on their fucking doorsteps.
They're making you applaud.
Yeah. And when people were doing that...
It's a hypnosis technique.
When you know what the goal is, it's like this hypnosis, compliance, all in this together, this fucking...
My one that really bugs me is accuse people of the thing that you're doing. Donald Trump's going to weaponize the justice system against his political enemies. Like, what the fuck? That's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. Just saying the other side are doing what you are doing is one of these tactics that is like a psychological spell. I'm seeing, this is before I even get too crazy, I'm just seeing these like tricks. And I'm like, those feel like psychological tricks. They seem like some kind of magic, some kind of dark magic. I did look into magic because I feel like me and my missus had started to do stuff by accident. As I say, one of the things, we're getting on drugs, you get a bit freaky. Magic ceremonies often involve sexual rites. So we're kind of using drugs and a
bit of pegging.
Hey, one of the chakras is down there, so you've got to stimulate it somehow. I do feel like we accidentally did things at certain times on certain days which were ritualistic in their way, so I did look into sort of magic, and this was this after the experience at the festival. I was like, let's make a spell. In fact, because of the psychic warfare, magicians are real. That's what Masons and Freemasons are. Okay, these are people that genuinely believe in a lot of this stuff, like Templars, the Masons, all these secret societies that have been compromised over the years by the evil side, but they're good people on them. But you're better off leaving them alone, because I bet there's an evil person in every Masonic lodge.
Well, there's an evil person in every building.
Yeah. They are decent people, but there'll be a couple of them in there that are like fake Masons and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you get that, walk into a shopping centre, you'll be around some fucking dark shit. Just you get any group of people anywhere, and there's real good people and there's real bad people. And sometimes you're not good at detecting them. My dog barks at one guy. He seems really nice, but because George barks at him, I'm like, I don't trust that guy. I don't trust him one bit. I trust my dog more than I trust anyone else. Yeah, some people are very, very good at deceiving and acting. It's like the typical, oh my God, I never knew that guy was a paedophile, rapist, fucking psycho. We always thought he was so nice, and you would never suspect. There are people who are very good at hiding in plain sight. Well, psychopaths and sociopaths exist. Yeah. Anyway, so the idea of magic. So there is a really good resource on magic. There was a 33rd degree Mason in about the 1950s, a guy called Manly P. Hall. That's Manly P. Hall, not Manly P. Hole. Okay, but now I've heard Manly P. Hole, I can't not say it. So I'm listening to Manly P. Hole's lectures, and they're available free on Spotify. They're incredible. Really fucking good. And one of the things he talks about is your guardian angel.
So the angel on your shoulder, but he says you've not just got an angel, you've got a guardian angel. All of us have a guardian angel. But he also says you also have a demon. They call it the guardian on the threshold. And I feel like I know my guardian angel. I feel like it's actually, like, it sounds very big-headed, but it's Freya. It's like this feminine goddess, like kind of a weird thing. Like I feel like I'm supposed to look after and protect the women in my life. And, she wants me to do that. And then I'm like, but what's the guardian what's the demon? And then I realize it's the same person. Everything has two sides. This fits in perfectly with the Hermetic principles. So actually, a lot of the things that I kind of do that are bad is because the demon whispers in, but it's the same person, but two voices. I've heard it before that you are not the voice in your head. You are the one who listens. Now that freaks me out a little bit because I do feel like sometimes I am listening to a voice that's not me and then I'm debating it. This got me at the festival as well because the demon on the threshold, your guardian demon, one of their favourite phrases is fuck it. So okay. I was sick on the Friday because my wife cut me a big bump of medical ketamine. And I looked at it and went, that's far too big. Yeah. I'm going to put that in half. I cut it in half and then I go, fuck it. And then put it back together and do the whole lot. And then I'm really sick. Quite hilariously because physically I was sick, but mentally I was fine. So I was like, someone's got to finish the light. And they're like, can you move that over there? Like just still organising the camp and like unpacking, but vomiting. Oh. I think fuck it is a really clever technique that the demon on your shoulder uses. And I don't think that they are you. I think that's, that's a supernatural entity that sits on your shoulder and it's two-faced entity. It's the same entity, but it's got a dark face and a light face. And what started happening was a lot of my friends, particularly the women, started getting really shitty with me for no reason. And I think it's because there are whispers in their ears. They started a psychic attack. My wife started getting a bit shitty with me and I was like, babes, they're lying to you. And she hated it because I was absolutely right. And it's like, look, I lay out logically. Like I got in trouble because one of the things I was trying to go to bed. And my wife's like, well, where's that bag of ketamine? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe she took it. Yeah. I meant that maybe she picked it up and walked off with it because, it's quite logical. What she heard was me say, maybe she took it. And then the whisper, he's saying you stole it.
Yeah.
He's saying you stole it. And the next day she fucking hates me. Yeah. And I'm like, this is weird. It's really like, I'm sorry, I did say it, but I didn't mean you stole it. I just meant maybe you picked it up and took it. Yeah, but you said you took it. I'm like, yeah, maybe you did take it. I don't know. It wasn't there. Yeah. I couldn't find it. Psychic attack, psychic warfare. So I really believed that. So I wanted to create a spell to improve my ability to communicate with people because it was getting annoying. And I was like, these motherfuckers are attacking me. I need something. I'm going to cast a spell. So I looked up how to do spell casting and all this stuff. And combine it with my shamanic trip.
You're such a weird cunt.
I am. I
love that you're casting spells now.
So yeah, so I go to do it, and I should have known that men are not supposed to do it. Okay, This is Ergi in Norse. Like Odin tries to do magic, it backfires. Only the women are supposed to do the magic.
Okay.
So anyway, I've got this thing for the spell. I've got like stuff for it. I've got like candles and crystals and all these things, and then there's some weird shit that happens with our house. Like our house, someone puts an offer in and we need to put an offer in straight away. And I'm like, okay. Like, so we act and I'm like, do you want to cast a spell? And my wife's like, what? I'm like, I've got the stuff because I was going to cast the spell for my ability to communicate with my friends and women. But I'm like, let's just do it for the house. Mate, it fucking worked magically. Like, honestly, like we created a sigil, little symbol. If anyone wants to use the sigil, you're free to use it. All you do, you draw a pound sign, but instead of a single strike, you do a double strike. So it's like an equal sign through the pound. So it's a money, equality. You draw a heart round that pound sign, and then you just draw a U shape and a roof over it to box it all into a house. Okay, that symbol, we built that sigil in, we wrote it on ourselves, we burned it, we used it in the kind of ritual, and every communication has just gone perfectly to the point where like the solicitor was like, look, I'm not supposed to do this. You haven't paid me. You haven't provided me the information. I've done it. That's bizarre. Yeah, that's weird. Everything's gone perfectly for us in this house purchase. However, we failed to close it down properly, to shut down, because you're opening up the gates and a few days later, I looked at my text messages to my mum, and this is a day when I'm sober. There was a really freaky GIF that I had sent to my mum, and it was like in a computer game, but there was a false idol, like a metal cow with a fire underneath it. Like really freaky thing with a Joker face laughing in the corner.
Right.
And some weird Russian text and number 1488, which is some kind of like Nazi thing, I think.
What, and you sent that to your mum?
I didn't send it. It went from my phone. I don't know how. Like, also I did find audio recordings of me smoking a bong sent to my mate. And I was like, I didn't send that. So I freaked out because I was like, when we cast the spell, we didn't close it down. We didn't blow out the candle properly. We didn't close down the space.
Right.
And then like spirits are now attacking us like physically. And I was ready to go and do another one. And my wife was like, you fucking idiot. That's exactly what they want. They want you to keep like launching spells so you do a fuck up and they can really get in.
Okay.
She was like, just go and pray, light a candle and then blow out the candle. And I did that and it was fine. But I was freaked out because I was
So
like...
you wouldn't fuck with magic anymore?
No, I wouldn't, no.
Yeah, see, that would be my initial thought would be like, don't fuck with things I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. I'm that kind of Dunninger-Kruger effect, you know, like I think I know a lot. You know, when you start learning about a subject, you think you know everything.
Yeah.
And then as you get further along, you realise you don't fucking know. And also doing it on drugs as well, you're going to forget stuff. So I was a complete idiot. And I did I don't think I actually put my mum in any real danger. It was just that they made me think that so that they could trick me to open another spell where I could really get absolutely butt fucked. But my wife was just like, no. So all I did was I took some very simple stuff, lit a candle, did a little prayer, and then like as I blow this candle out, I close it. The area's safe, and just closed it down. And nothing since then. But I do believe that magic is real. I do believe that sigil, if you ever want to move house, draw that sigil, put it on your envelopes or something like that.
I'm fucking around with it, mate.
It's good. I mean, there's nothing bad about it. It's just about you leaving the place you're in. You leave it in a good condition. You arrive at the place and it's all in good condition. Yeah. You're received with love and you're sort of like, it's a nice, good spell. And it was done all with good. The problem was I didn't close the window. There was a really fucking weird bit when we're casting the spell and we're sort of like having a bit of fun. And I saw us in a different place. And she saw us in a different place as well. It was kind of different because to me, we didn't look like humans.
Right.
We looked like, aren't they, praying mantises? Yeah. But we were together in this kind of arena and there was loads of aliens and things around it. And it's like, I think we did something, you know, we kind of got into a spiritual space and like fucking it worked, whatever. We tapped into some magic. Yeah. So there is a lot of magic symbols. Even the McDonald's logo is found in a grimoire, a spell book. You can find loads of symbols, logos and things that are very, very old that have been imbued with a specific thought, reason, and that represent certain things. So yeah, magic's real, good magic and dark magic. I wouldn't recommend fucking with that at all. What I like is the idea of randomness. So I've got this coin, very simple yes/no coin that I can flip. That's fine. That helps me. It's a little bit of a chaos thing. Yeah. But I'm not interested in magic per se myself because I do think it's real and I think it's dangerous. But this goes back to the whole political situation where if you get real QAnon about things, there's really fucked up shit happening. There are satanic rituals with kids, blood, with sex. There's a lot of great channels I recommend, like Forbidden Knowledge with Billy Carson. Absolutely bang. I love Billy Carson. Spirit Science, great channel, mostly animated. Very, very good stuff. There's a guy called Robert Seffer, who's a anthropologist who talks about human history and like loads of weird and wonderful stuff, and it all ties together beautifully. And you know, it's kind of a cute little channel. He goes on, he eats food and then he does covers on like ukuleles. It's really weird. What else would I recommend? There's a bunch of stuff, but like I can't remember now. But yeah, there's a load of like, if you tune your own thing and then you follow the recommendations, I think you get nudged to good stuff.
Well, it's not a bad time for me to start like looking into things, because it's been a while since I like switched off from everything, which I don't know if I told you this. I've now, as of 3-4 weeks ago, I left my fiat work. I'm going full time with the podcast and my own art and my own everything that I'm doing is my own stuff. So it's giving me more time, with the exception of the editing time. It's giving me more time to like follow interests, which I'm naturally just following. So conversations like this and conversations around, I've always been interested in like aliens and like anything along that side, or like history that might be slightly different. A lot of that stuff I'd like to have those conversations on. How can I make my life better and just more enjoyable? And so a small amount of that is like finances and like being private and stuff like that. But also it's like, what food do you eat? Like, what do you do with your family? Like, how do you avoid the crazy, scary shit that's happening in the world? All that kind of stuff. So it's nice to like spend more time thinking about those kind of things, which I haven't been able to.
There's a good book, Elliot Hulse, who used to be like a meathead YouTuber who kind of went super spiritual, went off on one. Yeah, there's a book called Warrior, King, Magician, Lover, and it's about these 4 different archetypes of the male psyche. You know, the warrior.
Yeah.
You know, so for that, you need to train. You know, like we were saying earlier, you need to be capable of violence and then in control of that. So you need to be peaceful but not harmless. The king aspect is being a good judgment, good father, good, you know, being fair, but being strong, being, you know, not being cruel and a tyrant, but being a good ruler of your family. And the magician is kind of like your creative side. So that's your artworks, you know, like, you know, whether it's being a musician or a sculptor or a painter or something, being creative, but also like not getting lost in that and not losing it. And then the lover is also kind of like enjoying yourself, like not being hedonistic and too over the top, not being too distant, just being the perfect balance. And, you know, each one has a extreme which you don't want. Each one of those 4 archetypes has to be balanced. So I think it's important to try and mix those things up. You know, I like to do some physical activity. I like to sort of read and expand my mind. I like to try and create something and try and enjoy life. And I've got a little gift for you, actually. One of the things I've created. So I'm going to give you the oldest game known to man. There we go. Okay. So that's a board.
The oldest game known to man.
So you can, this game is called, they call it the Royal Game of Ur, because it was found, the game board was found in the city of Ur in Babylonia, Mesopotamia. As I know how much you like fiat currency, the counters are just coins, in this case pennies. So there's a stack of 7 painted black pennies, which is just with hammerite, and there's 7 normal pennies. And I've got the 4 dice. Unfortunately, I can't give you those because they don't belong to me. I'm allowed to give you one of these. Okay. I'll teach you how to play it later. It's a great fucking game. But this is kind of a thing, like, you know, just taking the time out to play a game. Like, me and my wife love this game. It's an amazing game. Like, to consider this game is 7,000 years old, it's super advanced. But there's something
called again?
The Royal Game of Ur. So this is just made out of a bit of pallet wood. Yeah. It's just a wooden thing. Like, I cut the little section.
Oh, you made this?
I just chiseled that out, yeah. Yeah, so I just sanded it and just, like, put some Vaseline on it. It's not amazing, but this is the first one I made. I've made a slightly bigger one. At some point, because I'm moving away to go and do, you know, part of what I'm going to do is going to be working with wood. I might make some of these boards, you know, make the counters and make ultimately the dice myself and try and sell them. But I will make these as hobby boards anyway. But that's the first one I ever made. Thank you, man. So there you go. That. And I'll teach you how to play it later. But it's very nice. It's a fun ass game. So there you go.
Well, should we wrap this up?
I don't think I have anything else to... Like, I think I've told you all of the crazy ass shit. I think I've mentioned everything. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I don't believe so. I wasn't even going to talk about the spell thing because that was kind of weird. But I'll finish up with this. Yeah. Like, I feel like I have a very specific life purpose. I have a mission. I have a goal. I'm moving away. Let's say, I'm not going to say where I'm going, but I'm going to Terminus. Some people will know what that means because I do think that there's going to be some kind of societal event with a collapse. I'm taking a fuckload of books because I don't believe that the cloud will last. So I'm collecting books to take to Terminus and to hopefully establish a new world order based on the only 4 laws and the human rights.
Well, mate, it's been good to catch up. We're going to go get some sunshine. And,
yeah, let's do it. Take them weasels out.
Take the rats out. Interesting story. From most other people, I would just dismiss it, but I believe you experienced that, and it's weird.
You wait till these are off. I'm going to tell you more about yourself, mate. So, how do I turn this thing off?
All right, mate. Just put it in here.
The paradigm of absolute control.
Go.
And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers scum. They're on giant death factories keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin and they run around screaming, we love Satan, we wanna eat babies. I have them on video. Hillary's in the creepy weird sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number 1 is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot and the goblins are hobbling round coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go. We're such self-centered crap. We don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of pointed people of the very worst type, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a